we're going live here, folks. Call meeting in order, workshop for the Silver Falls School District Board. Attendance, we have all board members in attendance. And now we'll go into the, we've got a member from OSBA is going to conduct a workshop for us on being board members. And so Kim or Vince Adams, who wants the floor here?
Yeah, welcome, Vince. Vince is going to walk us through a couple of things tonight. He's going to talk a little bit just about board governance essentials. I've done this class before, and I think it's really just a helpful refresh if you're familiar with it, or if you're not, it's really great information. And then we're going to move into the school finance. It's super exciting. And I want to say a special thank you to Willamette Valley Bank and Saturn's for providing pizza tonight for you guys. So that was donated for the fall kickoff, and we had a little extra left in there, so we bought you guys pizza tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And welcome, Vince.
Thank you, Chair Weiser, Superintendent Nicholson, Silver Falls Board. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm just kind of blown away. I came around the side of the building. I was really blown away. That was beautiful high school. So we don't have a little to talk about. We have a lot to talk about. We have been kind of stacking topics into this training. So yeah, we're going to do some roles and responsibilities, do the what's the board's role in school finance, and go through that. I'm really excited to go through this again because I've done this slide, that slide deck with one other school board out in Middleton. And then we're gonna wrap up with some slides that I got from my legislative team on how we can advocate in this legislative session. That's how we'll wrap up. So it's gonna be a busy night. So we're gonna move really, really quick. Normally I have a little more discussion at the front end of this. We're gonna kind of shorten that and we'll get to the didactic part. So let's dive in, and I just want to go around really quick. Try to keep your answer like 1 minute or less. What's exciting you about school board work, and what are you struggling with?
I'll go first. What excites me is being involved and trying to benefit community and our schools, and to give our students best possible education we possibly can with the resources we have. And so that's exciting, and just being around. So I'm a retired educator, so it doesn't take much for me to get excited being around schools anyway. But whether I'm at games or in the school building or at lunch, it doesn't matter. Just seeing all the young people and not to get too soapy about it, but just seeing that that's our future, and watching them interact, and it just takes you back as an individual, and it gives you hope for the future.
I think it's okay to get a little soapy about it. So I think that's what gets us through the tough stuff. You know, because as technical as K-12 education is, it's a lot of this.
Yeah.
School board work is this. You got to have passion for this work, because they can be tough. It can be really tough at times.
And when it comes to what am I struggling with, it's you can't be all things to all people. Things have to be down the middle somewhere, and finding that happy medium that works for the majority. It's a tough road to find that spot and to get the right feel for your community. You want to do what's the right fit for our particular community. So that's the big struggle, and without a lot of finance strength to go with.
Love that.
I'll dovetail on what Phil just said. I think that's a struggle for me. Is like you always want to try to make everybody happy all the time, and just not possible with decisions we have to make.
True that.
You know, whether it's based on resources or other constraints that we have to deal with as a board. We have to make tough decisions. Sometimes it is based on numbers and fact, and that ignores feeling. You know, which there's a lot of, like you said, there's emotion in what we do. trying to make everybody happy is, something I struggle with, and you're not gonna make everybody happy all the time. That maybe it's my own nature trying to be a people pleaser, but I struggle with it.
Yeah, I think it's natural. I mean, we come to this work because we want to help, right? And so, yeah, we didn't. When you first ran for office, you didn't realize you were gonna put yourself in the line of fire. Or a lot of people don't realize when they run. What's exciting you about it?
I think just what we do every day has, effect on so many lives, right? And
Mhm.
seeing, our district flourish for the most part, and with decisions that we have to do or things that we help put into place or people we help hire. I think that's the exciting piece. I mean, I think each one of us has or have kids in this district and it affects them every day and affects what they do. I think that's exciting that what we can help do helps have a positive impact on not only our own kids, but every kid in this district.
Great. Anybody else? In there. What's exciting you? What, and that could be specific. I mean, it could be a curriculum adoption. It's something you're gonna do. Yeah.
I think anything for me, programs that enhance the student experience. It's always. That's where the bread and butter is at for me. We've had some kind of exciting things happen with our school nutrition program recently, and I think that's been good. And I think we've got some things maybe on the horizon that might be helpful for our school nutrition program. It's something our community's been concerned about. I think maybe all communities are always concerned about school nutrition programs,
Yeah.
but that's something that our community's been concerned about for a while.
Can you share any details about that? I'm just curious.
Oh, well, we took advantage of the
Community eligibility program.
set.
Yep, CFP program, yeah.
Yep, and so our kids have free breakfast, free lunch.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great.
And that's really, it's been great because we weren't sure if it was going to affect our bottom, how it was gonna affect our bottom line, but so far, the participation has increased, so
Yeah.
we're really happy about that. So that's something that I'm excited about. Struggling with just in general, the financial situations with, and it's not just our district, but across the state, declining enrollment in Oregon and nationwide is, makes our financial situation unclear. And then the PERS obligations that we are going to be faced with make it just, we're not going to be able to do a whole lot more than the basics, it seems, and that's not what we're looking for. We're looking to, like I said earlier, enhance the student experience. So that's a struggle for me.
Yeah.
I'll share.
Yeah.
Oh, were you, sorry, Jennifer, you were done. I mean, I'll be honest, not much about this excites me. I love the kids and I love my community. It's been really hard, very stressful. The one thing that does kind of excite me is Kim, and both Kims have been doing such a great job. That is exciting to me, that we made a good choice, that we're headed in a much better direction. There's a lot of self-evaluation that happens with this too, because I'm an over analytical person, over self-evaluator. So it just stresses me out a lot, trying my best not to say something that's going to further divide a community, something that's going to be on YouTube for all of time. All of it's just like, it can weigh on you. And so so what am I struggling with? Balancing everything, family, work, the finances, the culture wars in education right now that OSBA itself is not immune to, right in the middle of it. And that is trying to figure that all out and what the future looks like. That's what stresses me quite a bit. So, but I'm very, very happy with the board that I work with. So that's exciting to me. I love my board.
Yeah.
I think I have a fantastic group of people up here. Very well diverse in professions and thoughts. And so that's another positive. So yeah, the board I work with and the DO that I work with right now, that's exciting.
Good. I wish I could offer you some comfort on the anxiety of doing board work, doing this type of work, but the more you become aware of all the factors that are in play there, the more anxious
Mhm.
the work gets. I think it's a lot of it is, well, we'll talk about where we should focus our attention.
Mhm.
We'll spend a lot of the time on that. And there's some comfort in that. Focusing on the work that we do really is helpful, being able to have impact. But yeah, this is complex and there are consequences if we get it wrong.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anybody else before we move on?
Yeah, I think for me, what's exciting is K through 12 has probably one of the most significant impacts on young people. They spend, half of their lives in our schools. And our school district's pretty unique. It's a pretty tight knit community. So either someone's son or daughter goes to the school or their grandson or nephew. So just the community impact and being part of a group that hopefully has a positive impact on that, I think is really exciting. And I think by the same token, it's also terrifying because of the exact same, you do have an impact in every decision. There's a student or a teacher or an aide or group behind those decisions. So why it's exciting can also be, incredibly terrifying because of the weight of these positions that we hold and that, things that we do well or don't do well is going to have a direct impact on someone.
Really appreciate that you used the word impact, I think 4 times in your remark there. Because if there's one thing that I want you to take away from tonight is that you have impact. You can have impact. We're going to talk about what the education science is here in just a minute. But yeah, you definitely have impact. You're not wasting your time. Okay, I want to keep us moving because I want to get through all this content. Okay, so what are we going to talk about? So we're going to talk about, well, why the heck do we do this school board thing? Because we kind of take it for granted, but I mean, why the heck do we have school boards? And what the heck should we be doing on a school board? And then we'll, pivot into that district finance. I didn't add the advocacy thing, but throughout I have scenarios embedded through this. So you're going to be applying your knowledge as we go through here. So lots of fun scenarios that are, well, the names have been, changed to protect the innocent, but they are very plausible. I don't have slides here about public meeting law or executive session, ethics, policy development, nuts and bolts stuff. But with that said, I want to switch here. And is there anything specific that you want to get out of this? Do you have any nagging questions that you want me to address? Because I got a whole bunch of slides here. It is very probable we won't get to all of them, and that's okay. But none of them are more important than your questions. That can come from over here too.
I guess biggest mistakes the boards can make. So I'm kind of,
Well, yeah, we'll cover that.
Okay.
We'll cover that in spades. Anything else? And I'm an recovering extension agent. So I used to work at Oregon State University. So this is a workshop. At any point, you can stop me, ask questions. We can discuss, take bunny trails, whatever the group needs. Okay. So, all right, let's get into it. All right. You kind of talked about this, but yeah, why did you run? Now, some of you are new. So I know you're new,
Bill,
you're,
us three.
you 3 are new.
Yeah.
Jennifer, you've been on the board for a bit. When did you get elected?
2017.
Okay. And Owen? How
Yeah,
long-
so this was my second term on the board, but not consecutively, so
Oh, okay.
I was on the board.
When were you on the board before?
I'm gonna get this wrong, but like 2010 through 14, roughly, something like that.
Those kind, gentle times in the wake of the Great Recession.
You're
Yeah,
old
there's
dog.
fiscal stress then too. You probably bear
Not
those
to the
scars.
same degree, but
Yeah. Aaron, how long?
Yeah, like a similar situation. Oh, and I had a previous term. It was a
Okay.
2-year shortened term that I was on for from 15 to 17. And then came back on the board in 2021.
Repeat offenders. Man, wow.
Yeah.
How about you, Tom?
14 years,
Yeah, you've been around. I've seen you at annual at conventions.
a
and stuff.
couple.
Yeah, I've seen you around. for
It's
sure.
a busy time of the year. It's hard for me to attend. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we talked about this. Maybe hear from the folks that didn't comment before. Why do you serve today? Or why did you do this to yourself?
I guess just to kind of, for me, just to keep. I've been here a while. I've been there, done that, seen it before. Hopefully try to repeat some mistakes.
Yeah.
Maybe bring up a little bit of, well, we looked at that back in the day or things like that, just to offer I find that handy. I mean, I've seen a lot of iterations of the drama up and the drama cycles that go through these things. I
You're the
find it-
board historian.
Well, I guess, yeah, it's just, I find it interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I found my first term on the school board, it takes a long time before you can really contribute meaningfully, because
Mhm.
you're joining this enterprise that has a long history and it's got a lot of momentum in a certain direction, and
Yep.
takes a long time to wrap your head around those things and learn. So I felt like the second time around, I could hit the ground running a lot better. But probably the two things that prompted me to run the last election was we've got a real problem here with particularly our middle school, but some aging facilities and school bond. And my previous term, we had 2 failed bond attempts, and we were ramping up and preparing for another one at that time. And so I thought I could contribute to that, and really felt strongly that we'd need to pass a bond and take care of those problems and invest in our buildings and invest in our kids and our people. And the second that was really the time in our district when I felt like there was a heightened culture war happening, and it was causing some division in our community and our board. And I wanted to help be a person that would put an end to that. Yeah, so.
Cool. Getting back to your why. How about one of you guys that just ran? Why the heck did you do that?
For me, it was an easy continuation of my professional life. I was an educator, servitude, and survey community. And I felt it was an extension of that. I'm retired from teaching, and maybe I can be a benefit with that expertise fitting with other people's. We're a very varied group, and I think it works well that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt when I was in the classroom, I always preached that to my students, to serve back their community. I've been my local fire district. I've been a board member for 20-some years, and I always use that in the classroom as an example, and would cite, I was a social studies teacher. So I'd cite examples of how you could give back to your community, whether it be in a scout leader or whatever, or through your church and this sort of thing. So it's just try to be a living example of that. So.
Great, thank you. Committing or sharing or inculcating that value, what is it? It's a tradition of service. It's a culture of service. Okay, I want to keep moving. Why are you here? So this is an important question. This is my board. This is from a few years back. So why does the school board matter? And also that other question. I think it's board culture.
Well,
Yeah.
and I kind of want to piggyback on that too, because I think that this board has done a good job for the last several years, this iteration of the board and the last iteration of the board, of staying out of those culture wars that are pervasive in the United States. And I think that's been a real benefit for, I hope our whole community that we're not engaging in those kinds of discussions here. We're trying to focus on the business that affects students' everyday experience and, not getting caught up in, I guess, broader questions.
I think to piggyback on what Jennifer Anowen said, I think prior to a few years ago, I'll say prior to 2021, we had a board culture here in our community, in our district, that was just not super positive. Some of the culture wars got infiltrated to the point where it was impeding on doing good business for our students. And that's what we're here for, right? And I'll say, at least since I've joined the board 2021, Owen joined with me. And I think that, since then, I think at this, like Jennifer said, this iteration, the previous board, and when Josh and Phil and Derek, joined the board as well, the commitment to not having that culture war be a part of the boardroom, not having the politicization of issues, to always coming with an open mind, a willing spirit to openly disagree, because we don't all agree. Which is a good thing, but it's been professional. Nobody brings popcorn to the board meetings anymore to see what's going to go down, right? It's like we want to make it about doing business for our kids. And that's what I think this board has done with this culture, to change that, at least for the last 3+ years, to make it much more positive than it had been, unfortunately, for a few years there.
So you had a shift in culture. Tell me more about how that changed. What did that look like?
I think it was a very strategic effort to model the behavior we want to see. So why does it matter? Because if we're a mess, everything's going to fall underneath us and create more of a mess. So I think that, why does board culture matter? Because it starts with us as leadership and how to model that behavior.
To our students, which is
and our
important.
community. Yeah, absolutely.
And part of the process that, for me, that I saw and I was part of, was making sure that we were following procedures, because how we participate up here matters. And if we do it in a way that is predictable, like we can predict how things are going to go, then the whole affective filter kind of decreases and we're just able to be more productive. So I think that was one of the keys, is really refining our procedures on how we do business.
You built infrastructure within the board to clarify the way you're going to do your work together. And everybody knows the rules. Yeah, good. Yeah, good. This is great. Good conversation. So let's talk about this leadership team. So when I talk about, I'm going to use this term leadership team, I'm going to use it throughout. So it starts with the board, because the authority derives from you. You get your authority from statute. The legislature gave you the authority to govern. So you provide direction for the district. You set the vision of where this district is going to go, and you have oversight. You see that happens, right? You also have a superintendent, and she's in charge of overall, operational leadership. All this. She also brings expertise. She's the educational leader for your district, and she puts your vision into action. There's a third leg to the stool, and this is your administrative professional. So your board secretary is in charge of coordinating all your work, because you show up. Well, how often do you meet? Once a month? Twice. Good for you. So, but for the intervening 2 weeks, things have to be pulled together. There has to be things done logistically so you can govern. She ensures your compliance, because there's no expectation that a person sitting on a school board, sitting down in the seat, understands public meeting law and knows how to do this work. And often school boards veer off, and it often falls to the board secretary to keep you out of trouble. They also provide continuity. Often it is the board secretary who has been on this team the longest, because school boards come and school boards go, and frankly, so do superintendents. But board secretaries, they know where the bodies are hidden. They might have put some there. So yeah, your administrative professional is a crucial part of this team. I'm really pleased to see that everybody is here. That is not always the case. Sometimes I work with boards and the board secretary's there. You know, and the superintendent chooses not. Or vice versa. One or the other is missing. So at these intersections, there's important things that are happening. So between the board and superintendent, you are two sides of a coin, of a leadership coin. And that's where overall district leadership comes from. A school board without a superintendent is just a group of frustrated people because they can't do anything. I was just talking to a board chair that was really frustrated because he couldn't communicate with his community because he couldn't direct the communications, the CIO. It's not his role in policy. He can't direct any member of the staff to action. He's stuck. He doesn't have a superintendent. Tough place to be. So, and a superintendent, it's one of the most lonely jobs out there. And so you work as a team to support your superintendent to be the very best leader that they can possibly be. Not only do you give direction, but you're also her think tank. And you're her support network, okay? And you're also her eyes and ears in the community. On the other side, we have governing body operations. I mean, this is, we talked about that briefly, but I mean, where the rubber meets the road here is the relationship between the chair and the administrative professional, because you two have to work together. So you can get the very best out of this governing body, right? And then down here, we have executive functions, because check me here, you are the executive assistant as well. And so these two have to work together, you know, for the 2 weeks in between board meetings. And, you know, Kim's got a really big job that she's got to do. She has to fundamentally, what she has to do is make decisions. She needs to know where to be and when, who she should be talking to. And Debbie is the person that helps orchestrate her day. This is where in the center of this, we get leadership efficacy. And if any one of these legs of the stool starts to weaken, then we have problems. The district, you know, leadership efficacy, falters. That's when we have that vacuum, we see other factors, other forces come in to try to fill that vacuum. And it manifests lots of different ways. It could be community, it can be union, it can be the state, lots of different things. But when we're robust and strong, then we have an effective leadership team. So I will use the term leadership team. When I use that, that's what I'm talking about. Okay, tell me about your kids.
We have 3,600 plus of them.
Okay.
They are awesome. We come mostly from, you know, rural background, a lot of hardworking kids, but we also have a mix of kids who don't have that. So we're a very blessed community compared to some others. If you look demographically, when it comes to wealth, I mean, our houses are quite expensive here compared to others, but that's created this disparity. If you're already here, your properties go up. That's creating some issues for those families that don't have the means. Our special education group here is probably one of the best in the state. I would almost bet.
What's your identification rate?
Say what?
Donates.
Okay. I'm quiet.
I missed your.
14%.
Well,
SPED identification rate.
I thought we were fifth. I know we're over the 13.
Or over what we get reimbursed for.
I'm not shocked by 14 at all. Yeah.
It's 15 was correct.
15.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
my summary. They could add others.
No. We're getting a more diverse population all the time.
Tell me about that.
As far as, well, we're getting more, we've gotten some lower income housing apartments come in, and so that's allowed some younger families and that couldn't live here before because Josh mentioned our real estate prices are high. And so that's given us social economic, it's made us more diverse in the community that way. And so we're grounded in a rural community, but we're fast, that's a part of it now instead of the whole enchilada, so to speak. And so a mixing of that. And if I was gonna identify an issue we probably have right now, I hate to even verbalize it, but it's not gonna go away because I don't verbalize it. But a town and rural divide somewhat because of different way of thinking about fiscal issues, about curriculum issues, about all kinds of issues. And so this is what I mentioned earlier about finding that middle ground. Because we can't satisfy everybody all the time, and that's when you get in troubles when you try to. And so to balance that, and we got to be very vocal, and sometimes there's groups out there that maybe aren't getting heard and need to be.
Yeah.
And so,
Oh,
so it's a changing community, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So, and you can't put one finger on it.
As a compliment to Phil said, I think we do have more than one would maybe see at face value on the diversity of our student base. You know, we have different faith communities. We have a large, as Phil said, geographic area here in the district.
Mhm.
Whether it be faith or cultural communities. There's more diversity than one would think looking at this district, right? Which influences, you know, into what Phil said, you know, how they vote on a bond, how they see curriculum, how they see different initiatives within our district. But yeah, I think I would say our students are, the diversity is more than one would initially think.
So why do you think I'm gonna just throw a couple prompts up here? You already, you know, what is your, well, free and reduced lunch stuff? Particularly with your change in food service, that's gonna blow that out because you're not gonna. But what's your poverty rate, do you think?
Well, we do know a couple years ago it went down.
Mhm.
And so we lost out actually on some funding, right?
Mhm.
Because the poverty calculation actually is good. It's positive. It went down, it decreased. It's what you want to see. But then it negatively affected our budget because of that calculation. So can't give you a straight a number, but it has decreased.
What is our?
Well, what are our Title I schools now?
Yep.
Well, we have several Title I schools. We have Mark Twain and Robert Frost.
Middle school.
600.
And the middle school, Silvercrest, Scotts Mills.
I don't think that's the same.
Is Butte
They
Creek,
they
Butte
had
Creek.
lost
It
Butte
went
Creek,
out, then it
but
went
I think
back
Scotts
in.
Mills is, but yeah, we're now a district-wide
Yeah.
title.
Yeah, right.
25, 30%.
I think it's 22 on the state report card. I just looked.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many homeless kids? How about that? I don't know if you've given them
We
that.
just saw
report.
that. I think, didn't we just see that a couple weeks
Your
ago?
your McKinney-Vento report.
I don't remember.
40, 60? Does that sound wrong?
That's high.
Maybe.
Oh, you mean the number? Yeah.
Number, not
Total
percentage.
number.
Number.
Yeah, total
Maybe
number.
40 kids,
Maybe, yeah.
Something like that.
I think we're up a little, quite a bit from there, but yeah, we don't have that exact right now.
So what do you think I'm driving at here? I mean,
Equity.
am I just asking idle questions here? There's,
Mhm.
you know, often am working with really small districts. And those folks, they do it on easy mode because they know all the families and they know all the kids. Easy for them to do this work. But for all y'all, you know, it's just really probably impossible for you to know all the families and all the kids. You're really stuck at the system level. So how do you know your kids? How do you know what they need? And that's what I'm driving at. Here's one last prompt. Oh, come here. How many seniors didn't graduate last year?
Good question.
We had about a 98% graduation rate. Is that right?
That's not what I asked.
Yeah, well.
Well, you
we
can
had
do the
about-
math from that backwards.
Yeah, you see.
How many?
You're talking
seniors
5-year
from last year's
graduation
class?
rate or 4-year?
So here's an interesting, the way you ask that question is it's a strange one to me because that's not ever a metric that I'll ever see calculated because you did it the inverse.
Mhm.
Yeah, but that's what matters.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the way
I'm
you
asking
that.
for the numerator, yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because that's when we're thinking about individual students, that the impact, it impacts me more when I think about the number.
So 15, 20 would be my educated guess based on the other information that we have.
What about the other question up there or over there?
Why?
The Y part.
Why didn't they graduate? I mean, you're down to what, 15, 20 kids?
Mhm.
Easy, flat out. We
Well-
weren't able to reach them.
Okay,
Well, there'll be probably realistically more kids that don't graduate with the funding problems we've had. We like, you just look at Sequoia Academy and what we
Yes,
do. and
correct.
How many
Yes.
kids we were able to graduate. I mean, that was one of the best parts of
Mhm.
last year, I think. It's just hearing from a bunch of those kids that, and hearing their stories of the connections they made with staff here that got them to graduate, the careers that they were going into.
now we're getting somewhere.
We have a trauma rescue program here in our school district called Sequoia Falls.
Okay.
How many? 50? Where do they cap that? How about 50 kids?
Yeah, Sequoia runs between 50 and 60.
Every single one of those kids was gonna drop out.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I, you know, the details, no, but I've been to listened to many presentations from the high school staff, and our high school staff is on a first name basis. with
Now we're
Every
going-
kid that.
Now we're going somewhere.
Mhm.
I mean, I have full confidence of that. It's just,
They have a kid that was living out of his car with a brain tumor.
yep, they know the story.
And they've got other kids that, because of their parents are kicked out, they're homeless. Our staff over there's literally trying to help them figure out where to take their rescue dog, trying to help them live life because the parents aren't stepping in. So, yeah, it's we're aware. I mean, I feel like we do a good job of being aware
So
and
no,
making actionable changes.
understand, I'm not raking you over the coals. I
Mhm.
mean, deep respect for what you're doing. I'm just trying to make you think about your culture here, and the way I ask this question is different than how we normally think about graduates. And I'm using graduate, which is the terminal measure, right? That's at the end of the system and on your end. So, I mean, but it's what we're held accountable to.
Hey Vince, can I comment on that real quick?
Yeah.
I know exactly how many kids didn't graduate last year.
Mhm.
It was 12. And now it's 9. So when you look at the non-completers, and this data is still embargoed, so I can't give you the exact numbers, but we know every single one of those kids and what happened. And we've been working, the window closes on the 6th of December. And so we've been working to clear some of those kids, and some of them have gotten a GED or, finished in other ways that, so there's a couple that we cleared up. And so like really looking at that data, and when you talk to Jen Hannon or Kirsten, those guys know exactly where those kids are at.
So that, yeah, go. for
I was
it.
just say, I appreciate the why
Mhm.
specifically, because I think Josh mentioned usually we look at like, oh, here's our success rate. Here's not our success rate. And for me, and this is an excuse just for where we're at last year, that why never really entered my mind. Like we were dealing with crisis, and this why should have. And now that you've asked it, like that why is going to stick no matter what the crisis is. So I appreciate the why.
And one of the things about the why too, that I think is important for us to keep in mind is, we have a child anxiety crisis in our country right now, and
Sure.
kids don't go to school. That's why, because they're anxious. And, Jen's talked about that for years. And that did not get better with COVID, distance learning, that just made things worse. So, anyway, just it's something for us to keep in mind.
Hopefully that improves a little bit with the no phone policy.
Yes.
Mhm.
Agree,
We've got some
some kids, their
Like-
anxiety will increase because they are so one with their phone that they don't want to give it up. It's very convoluted, but real, really, really real.
So I want to touch, Kim, you sort of said, superintendent told us it was 12 last year, but it's 9 today.
Well, it was 12 when we started looking at the data, and we were able to clear 3. So so when you get
Right. But I think I left graduate, who didn't graduate? That's ambiguous, isn't it?
Mhm.
Because we have, 4-year and then 5-year. And then how do we define success? I mean, because when you really get down to it, for some kids, if getting a GD, is that success?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe. But I mean, and who determines that? Who determines success in your school district?
I would say the community.
Other thoughts? The community picks that?
Well, so yes. So for example, like, okay, so what is success? Getting a diploma? Okay, that's not very hard to do in Oregon, particularly in Portland. So, or is it what you can do and how capable are when you leave? Are you a better person? Did you make some friends? Are you socially, emotionally built better? Do you have skills can you read? Can you do math? Can you actually do the job? That's success, like getting a kid to be independent. And to be a great citizen. Those are all things to me, like I want to see when I go to a store that when I go to get that job, that person knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
That they can get an apartment on their own, that they can pay their own bills, life skills. And I don't think you have to have the CTE programs and stuff. I got family members that barely passed high school. Now they work for PGE and they're on their second house. We're talking about like a 2.7 GPA, making over 6 figures. So I think that's a pretty successful life. So.
I think that our strategic plan generally is one way that we can measure success.
Yeah.
I don't know if and measure is even the right word, but it's one way we know that we're on the right track because usually the strategic plan has a lot of community input, staff input, and it's kind of like the guiding document. So I would hope that that would be part of the definition of success.
Do you guys have a portrait of a graduate sitting on your strategic plan?
We don't have a strategic plan right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's expired.
Well,
It-
okay.
Current
It-
one,
it-
yeah.
It has lots of things in it, but I don't think it includes the portrait of a graduate.
Yeah.
No.
Josh, what you were talking about, that's,
Mhm.
so portrait of a graduate it's kind of like the cool thing in strategic planning in schools. Essentially, you talk kind of like you were, it's like, what are those qualitative things that I want kids to walk away from school with? Along with being able to perform maths and write and consume information, written information. But yeah, I think it's really nice because it's an outcome-based metric of how our system is going to serve our kids in a way that's very tangible. So when you get to strategic planning someday,
Yes, soon.
if you want to, love to do that. I'm doing 2 plans this year, right? And we're doing portrait of a graduate. It's really cool.
Can you expand on that? What is that?
Portrait of a graduate?
Yes.
Yeah, it's basically a list, a list of qualities that you want your kids to have, like critical thinking, the ability to collaborate with others to achieve a goal. There's lots of different ones. Be ethical, and you determine what those things are. All you have to do is Google it. Portrait of a graduate, a bunch of them will come up.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really fun. Do you believe this? This?
Absolutely.
I gotta get up. Sorry.
Yeah.
No problem. You guys can stand up. Yeah, totally. Take care of yourselves. Do you believe this? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're scoffing. You're like, yeah. Every kid can crow, right?
Mhm.
Every child can succeed. Let's talk about, well, what's success? And who defines that? Who picks what success is for a kid? That's a squishy subject, but it's something ultimately for your district, you determine, you make that choice. I mean, community, yes, because you were elected, you are representatives of your community. Your community is choosing what success looks like. In the US and Oregon, we can predict student outcomes by social factors. Is that okay with this board?
Nope.
No. Look at a kid's
socioeconomic status, I can look at the color of their skin. How they sexually identify, all sorts of different ways we could slice our groups up.
You can do that in a group, but you can't do that individually.
I mean, optimally, it should be a surprise, right?
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that we don't look at those social factors and leverage them to, apply resources. How about this? What percent of students not graduating is acceptable for this board?
It's a great question.
I don't think in theory, it's not acceptable.
So you wanna,
It's not at all.
Agree.
I think, yeah, it's not, that hit me when you were asking the question earlier about the number and stuff, and I started thinking about other marks, benchmarks we use when we're evaluating our successes, and whether it be reading scores or math scores, when I see I'm sorry, but when I see 55% of them are on mark and going great, people are getting excited about it. I'm sitting there thinking, we got 45% that aren't making the mark.
yeah.
And they're behind the 8 ball and they're in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And that, to me, that's a crime. That we, that we've got to be able to address that better, if that's what we're gonna use as our successes. And because if you can't do the basic functions like that out in the real world, no matter what you're doing, it makes it makes more struggles than you're already gonna have.
So Aaron is saying that 12 kids not graduating last year is unacceptable. Is that realistic?
I think when you look at that number and then you take them to the individual thing, like for example, let's just, I love playing the extremes. A kid passes away in a car accident. Sucks. Terrible, heartbreaking. Would we say it's acceptable that they didn't graduate? Yes, because there's a reason.
Okay, yeah.
Families. You can't control a kid's household. You can't control what parents do there to how they do not or love their kids. That has a huge effect on whether their kid graduates or not. You can give all those kids the tools and you can look at those 12 and look at why. Did we fail them? Or had they been failed elsewhere? And we did everything we possibly could. If you can say we did everything we could, then I think it becomes something you have to be okay with, not necessarily accept it, but you kind of have to because you did your best.
I think in theory, in a perfect world, that it would be unacceptable because we want every child to graduate with the interventions that they might need, specifically with the help that we can give them in our system, right? With the resources that we have. The goal would be 100% always. Is that realistic to what kind of like what Josh is saying? It may not be.
Well, and I think that goes back to what Phil said in a little different way. We can't be all things to all people because we only have so many resources, but applying those resources to groups, I'm going to say that we know struggle to graduate. I think if we're doing that, then we can, keep looking at it and keep trying to make those resources serve us better. But I agree that I think that 100% is what we're striving for, and we just keep refining and keep asking the why question.
I'll let you off with it. This is a non-trivial question. So school boards that accept, not just understand a certain failure rate, but accept a certain failure rate, govern fundamentally differently. As soon as you open the door to say, well, we're never going to reach 100%, it's just not possible. If we can reach 98%, that's good enough. That's good enough. Particularly, you guys are in a resource constrained environment. Is it possible for you to reach every kid? No.
I think we can do it. 12. I think, I mean, that's doable.
It feels like it's in reach, right?
I think
But it would govern fundamentally differently if you say, I can let 12 kids go.
I think it's the tension between the ideal and the practical, and like we should always be striving for the ideal.
Mhm.
And then if for whatever reason we fall short, going back to the why, and like, yeah, let's say we've got a 90% graduation rate. We're like really hungry for understanding why we didn't hit that other 2%. And then like being able to like make changes. So I'm comfortable with striving for that, but also the practicality of, you know, like my Bill Borner said, we may do everything possible, but there may be other factors outside of our control that may impact it. And it's important to understand
Sure.
those factors and if we have any influence over them.
Yeah, I mean, it could be Jimmy, man, his granddad sold it up, and so did his dad.
Yeah.
And you know, I just heard him in the lunchroom and said that's what he's gonna do when he's just gonna quit. So you're gonna let him go?
No.
Should try not to.
That's the dividing line.
Mhm.
Where you know the kid and you're like, no, we're not letting Jimmy go. We'll do everything we can to save that kid.
Well, and I think our staff does that. I think that they're really in tune, and that
Mhm.
goes to show you that, I mean, the 12, that's pretty,
But understand that for a staff, they may believe that, but it's really hard for them to do that if their board doesn't believe it as well.
I think we believe it. I just want to acknowledge that we aren't doing that, the work, that they are doing the work.
Yes.
I want to give them the credit for that.
But having a school board that gives them solid ground to try any crazy thing to make it happen,
Mhm.
you know, running down the street to catch that kid so they can get him into school, that sort of stuff. Yeah. Okay. So now, so this slide's getting dated, because it only goes up to 2020. So I don't expect you to digest this whole slide. This is a timeline of the research looking at school boards. Now, those of us who've been doing this, like Tom and I, you probably remember Lighthouse. Remember Lighthouse inquiries? Mary Della Cardell. And so that out at Iowa State, they had this question. If we apply training to school boards, will they change what they do? And does that impact kids? And they developed this really big training program, deployed it in Iowa, and sure enough, school boards changed what they did, and you know, academic scores went up. They did it again in Texas and Montana, found the same thing. Eventually it got out here to Oregon when Tom and I were, you know, we weren't quite as great as we are now. And we're learning how to do school board work. And this was Lighthouse. And since then, there's been a real vibrant body of research around how school boards impact kids. We have a pretty clear understanding of what that looks like. We understand what are the behaviors and practices of boards that have positive impacts on districts and kids, and we know the behaviors and practices that have negative impacts. So let's take a look. So high performing boards, this is just a couple of research articles. You'll just see now, but you'll notice some similar names. This is Del Gardell, Alsbury before. And I want to draw your attention over here to the left-hand side of the screen. So we should be working on vision and goals. We set clear expectations and create a vision of high expectation for our district. That's what we spent the last hour talking about. Is what is your vision? What do you believe is possible for your district? We create the climate and resources. That's why I asked you the culture question at the beginning. Because you set the tone for your district. You align it, you create the conditions for success. School board is kind of like tree farming. Anybody know a tree farm?
So we all do it.
Inside the valley, I gambled and so most often people are like tree farmers. Yeah, tree farmer.
Yeah.
I've done it.
Tree farmers are really neat people because they don't think in terms of years or even decades. They think in terms of generations. I'm planting trees today that my grandkids and my great grandkids will harvest. They're gonna be dead. They'll never see those trees when they actually create, monetary value. You also create a sense of urgency. I like what we've been talking about, this idea.
that we want to capture, we want to get each and every kid and aligning and sustaining resources to be there. Prior to No Child Left Behind, it was acceptable for school boards to not look at disaggregated student data. Today, is it an accepted norm that you will be data savvy and consuming data on a regular basis to track the progress of your school district? How else are you going to hold the system accountable? Your job is to monitor progress.
Good evening, Foxes. I want to thank all of our staff and families for coming to conferences. Please go ahead and wrap up the ones that you are in so that we can get our awesome educators home for the evening and families as well. Thank you and happy Monday.
Next one is cohesive teaming, which is just a snazzy academic term for what the board is doing right now. You're meeting with your chief administrator and your administrative professional and growing as a leadership team. Okay, you're learning together, practicing unified governance, building shared beliefs and values, because I asked you really hard questions and you talk about it. Community engagement, roundly a part of your job. Remember, you're the eyes and ears of the superintendent district out in community. You are that interface between the public institution of education in your community and the community itself. And the last one is policy and accountability, because policy is how we operationalize our governance. You show up one night, and then for the intervening 14 days, Superintendent Kellison has to run a school district. And the only way she knows what to do or what you expect from her is what you've put into policy. Okay. So these are the high performing boards. Setting that vision for what's possible for your kids, creating a climate, a sense of urgency towards that, and aligning resources, tracking progress with data, learning together as a team, bringing community into your governance process and operationalizing your governance through policy. But then there's the dark side. What is it when we do not? And you guys know these. When our meetings are less orderly, it sounds like you've had some procedural changes that you implemented some rules. That probably would fit in here. I love this one down here. Less time spent on student achievement. They literally have grad students with stopwatches, watching videos of school boards, seeing how much time you spend talking about kids and their needs. Boards that spend more time talking about student achievement and the needs of students then have better outcomes. Those that spend less time don't. Common sense. Relying on anecdotes and agendas. So this is when we're making decisions based on my personal experience. My kids, I have a special ed kid, and so I'm going to make this decision based on my experience navigating the system. Only vaguely aware of school improvement initiatives. You should strive to be in a state of informed oversight. So this is where you're not overreaching, you're not micromanaging the superintendent and staff, but you're also not disengaged. You're hearing reports regularly in your meetings. You have easy access to information. For relationships, and when you think about relationships, I want you to think in 3 channels: within the board, amongst each other, between the board and the superintendent, and then board and community. Not yours. So those are the channels that we want to work in. But we always want to have, effective working relationships with the board as well. Lack of respectful and attentive engagement. Who's taking up too much airtime? That was my advice. I like to talk. Staff don't know the board. That's an ominous sign. The board and staff don't want to report to the board. They dread coming to board meetings. It's a bad sign. The opposite is a good sign. When your staff will come to this table and sit in front of you and tell you how they tried something out and screwed up, and it didn't work out the way they thought at all, But it was a great grant and I learned all these things and I'm gonna apply for the grant next year. We're gonna try it again in a different way. That's a great report. You want to hear your staff. You know, share how they're having trouble. Micromanaging. We'll talk more about that, but that's problematic. External blame. Making excuses. And it shows up lots of different ways. I mean, right now, we're putting lots of fingers at the end, right? Yeah, so you know what's going on down in Albany? Those teachers went on strike. Oh my God, we could just rein in the teachers union, then we'd have student success. Yeah, or, well, you indulged in this one. Well, it's the parents. You know, they didn't show up to curriculum night. I mean, we bought pizza and everything. What do we have to do? You know, give them margaritas or something? I mean, they just don't show up. They don't care. Parents are just. Oh. Yeah, well, it's that little rural district. They just don't have as much resources as the big ones, you know, like PBS, Zen Kaiser, you know, this. You know, their kids aren't gonna achieve at the same rate. I've had school boards tell me that excuse. We're out here in East Orange, we don't have resources, our kids can't achieve. I'm sorry, folks, it's November 25th, 2024. Y'all have internet, right? So if your kids need to talk to an astronaut on ISS, they can do that. You want to talk to somebody in India, talk to somebody in India. Whatever you want, I mean, the world is your oyster. There's no reason why a kid anywhere in Oregon can't get a world-class education. There are no excuses for that. See, are there any issues that I missed? I think that's it. Okay. Not part of it. So there's the summary slide. We don't make excuses. We want to foster, you know, good relationship within the board, between the board and the chief executive, and between the board and community. We want to spend the preponderance of our time talking about kids. Now, there are times when that's not possible. You guys just went through a whole bunch of tough stuff. You probably did not talk about student achievement very much, and rightly so. You had bigger fish to fry. There are some times when you're gonna have to shift your attention to something else. But then you should shift back under normal operation. It's about 70% of your agenda time should be spent on kids. Anecdotes and agendas, that doesn't mean we don't bring our personal passions to this work. Heard all of you talk about your own passion about this work. We all come with our different perspectives. That's why we have boards. Look, if we could do it with just one person, we would. It would be a heck of a lot more efficient. It'd be easier just to have a superintendent. But we know that getting a group of people together produces better decisions. That's why we have school boards, city councils, county commissions, legislatures, Congress. Yeah. Micromanaging. Don't do that. Talk more about that. I want you to visualize your school district as a cruise ship. I know I'm on the east side of the Willamette Valley, but I grew up in Reedsport, so I use nautical metaphors. Okay, now you have a captain of this ship. And Captain Kellison is in charge of everything. She's got to get this ship out of harbor at the beginning of the school year. She's got to get out. She's got to make sure that, you know, all engineering stuff goes, the props turn, housekeeping and maintenance. It's high school, food service, entertainment, from the, you know, cafe in the bow to the big restaurant midship, disco deck on the stern, crew staffing, you get the idea. Captain's in charge of all of that. School board, you commission the journey. You say, Captain Kellison, take us to the island of student success paradise, where every kid graduates. Maybe not 4 years, but 5. Okay, we can accept that. And they have a plan for post-secondary life. We know that we're launching them. And all those things that Josh talked about, that they're able to show up and be effective members of our community, wherever they are. That's what you commission that journey. You set that destination. And you're gonna set the intermediate goals along the way. At all times, you're relying on your maritime professional. Because does anybody in this room know how to run a cruise ship? I don't. So, and there's no expectation that anybody on a school board has any skill in pedagogy. Even though you're lucky enough to have one. But two, you have two educators?
Jennifer is.
Awesome. You're lucky. But there's no expectation of that. As long as you can vote in the district, draw a breath, you can be on the school board. It's kind of crazy. So, you know, and you don't know about school administration. You don't even, I mean, when you started, you didn't know about, you know, school governance. Goodness, if you did, then I wouldn't have a job, right? Okay. So we have to rely on our maritime professional. There's another way to think about this. When was the last time you were on a flight and you went up in the cockpit and told the pilot how to fly the plane?
But if you want to.
But you didn't.
Read about it in the newspaper.
Steve outside was wrong.
Because I want to send you to Congress and have you go over all this. Or what will it about being nice and having empathy.
But I mean, we don't. In fact, they locked the door, so we can't.
Yeah,
I mean.
literally.
It's not why they locked it. But but you get the idea that this is a very technical job. And the reality is that over the past 60 years, K-12 education is really professionalized and it's very evidence-based. We have a pretty darn good understanding of child development and how children learn. And we have trained professionals to work in our schools to do that work. Now, there's no expectation that I'm gonna do that, kind of the same thing. That said, though, we do evaluate along the way. So have you been on a flight where you've had one of these cool dashboards? You know, here we are, we're going to the island of student success, right? And we know what it's time to destination. We got time of origin, we got all this data to track our progress. There's also a little map icon. You can watch it with a little plane icon. It's really cool. So we do the same thing as a school board. We're getting regular reports on our progress to destination, right? And we also evaluate. So, have you ever been in this situation? Maybe not with this guy.
No.
So you're about to deplane, so here's the jump seat, the door is right here, and you're going by the captain and they say, hey, nice landing. Or if it was one of those where you're coming down in a thunderstorm, everybody falling in a thunderstorm. And you're like, thank you for getting this down a lot. That was a rough landing, but I'll take it. And you also, you know, you have a ticket. You choose this destination, right? So there's an expectation of where you're gonna go when you're evaluating. So it's a fun metaphor. But again, we're trusting our aviation professional in this situation. Okay. So what are the things that you do? Now, you have a big job. You were in charge of governance of K-12 education in your community. And so you're gonna need a big piece of equipment like a PA cap. So think about the length of the lever kind of corresponds to impact on kids. So the first and foremost thing that we do is we hire and evaluate a superintendent. Congratulations on doing a good job on that. Well, we don't have time to talk about superintendent evaluation. If you want to talk about that, I'd love to, but we really don't. Just do a good job. But that's your first job. And notice that the lever is really long. It's a lot of impact. Hiring a good education professional makes a lot of impact. You develop and adopt policy. Give that person clear direction, solid direction of what you expect. Next one is tracking school progress. Interesting finding from a year ago. My colleague Krista Miles did a research project looking at tracking student data and how it impacts. She collaborated with a fellow who's looking at transformational leadership in superintendents. What she found is that school boards that track school progress using data, it drives higher levels of inspirational, transformational leadership in superintendents.
Mhm.
Now, we don't know exactly why that happens, what that causal relationship is. But we suspect it's because you're having conversations. You put graphs about how your kids are doing, and you have conversations about that. Your teaching teams are coming into the boardroom to give these reports, and you're having these conversations, and people get excited about that. And that creates positive change. The tracking school progress is really important. Next one's approved budget. Now that lever's not very big. Maybe it's bigger here because you guys are feeling a little bit more, but the reality is, we don't have a lot of control over the revenue side of our budget. We are not like the other 49 states in the union, where we have more local control. They have local control, we don't. Our revenue is centrally controlled, which is frustrating. Then this last one is ministerial functions. This is the toilet paper contract. Or the check register. You guys don't look at the check register, I don't. No, I don't. Do you look at individual expenditures every month? Good, I'm glad Tom is shaking his head and laughing, going, oh my goodness. Corvallis board, we did. Terrible. Anyway. Yeah, so these are the things that we should be doing. Here's another way to look at it, board hires this, superintendent hires everybody else. Or you are the contract authority. Above a certain threshold, well, actually you are all, but you get involved above a certain threshold. Superintendent's in charge of all employee relations. You're setting a vision of where you want to go. Captain Kelson's gonna turn that into action. You're adopting policies. She's gonna develop regulations, put them in operational language so that staff can interpret what you expect. Captain Kelson's gonna roll up in a budget for us, plan those expenditures, and you're gonna set that budget. And then she's reporting progress and you're monitoring. What your job is.
Will you go back a slide up?
Yeah, sure.
So looking at those levers, in your experience, and you touched on this with the approving the budget, depending on where a board's at, do those levers seem like they change in size? Because I think, and the reason I ask that for me, right now, that budget one, not just the approving, but the budget one seems like a massive lever. Just, and I don't know if that's just because of the season that we were in. Obviously, we have the hiring evaluating superintendent, but that budget lever for me is still massive right now because it seems to have an impact on everything else that we do. If the money's not there, you don't have enough teachers, you don't have enough staff. So just in your experience, if you could speak to that at all, or if I'm way off the base.
How much control do you have over the revenue?
Over the revenue side, very little, but as far as like
Our expenditures.
Sure, but then you're just shifting chairs around on the Titanic.
Can
If
I
you're underfunded, you're underfunded.
Do you mind if I chime in for a
Please.
second? I think that you probably feel like the lever's bigger, Derek, because I'm like barraging you with information. And so I mean, I don't know if maybe that's not what you feel, but you're getting way more information and transparency, not necessarily transparency, but information. Like, we're giving you more information than you normally get. Like, for instance, we brought you the 3 survey bids, so you could see what the vast difference was in those 3 bids. And you could see that we were gonna go with the least expensive bid, even though they were under 25 grand. It wasn't necessary to show it to you, but we did in an effort to be transparent. And so that you would feel more comfortable with some of the decisions we are making. And so just in an effort, Kim and I have really probably overburdened you with financial information.
But you told us you were gonna do that.
I did.
totally appreciate it. So
And-
thank you for reminding
And I
us.
think it's
Yeah.
just a response to our heightened situation around the
Agreed.
budget right now. We have to, right? And it's kind of been the talk for the last however many months since we've really come into this issue. Now we're coming out of it, so we're hyper fixated on it for a while, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I guess my question was if your experience is as boards shift through that, does that ever seem to like stabilize? I think that's where we're at right now is in the stabilization period. I think it is probably the season we're coming out of.
So I'm glad the superintendent is giving you information in the fall, because the only, in my experience as a school board member, the only way to make this lever longer is to engage in budget planning at this time of year. Because by the time these two bring the budget to you in the spring, the cake is baked. I mean, they planned that. And so you can jigger around the edges a little bit. I mean, you really want to be testy about it. But the reality is, they've done their very best to create a balanced budget that's going to serve your kids. And if it's, you know, May Madness, that's not the time to be tinkering with that. You want to tinker with that, you know, now, October, you know, right after school starts and the dust settles. And that's when you want to start getting input on the budget, if you want to lengthen this and have a little more influence.
Well, and there's a difference between approving a budget and then a lot of what I think, not to put words in his mouth, but I think a lot of what Derek's talking about is the monitoring of finances and keeping abreast of that. And that, you know, isn't really there unless we want to throw it in with track school progress. Isn't really fit anywhere up there. But it's an area that we didn't do very well for a while and got caught off guard, surprised, and got in our situation. And so we are monitoring and they are doing a great job of keeping us abreast so that we're feeling comfortable, whereas we have an idea of, but that's different than approving a budget.
Yeah.
They are building the budget.
Yeah.
And I didn't mean to derail your thought
Yeah.
process there. I was
Yeah.
curious. Your
So you're
experience.
talking about reviewing financials and things like that?
Yeah.
Put that here.
Yeah, and I think that's later in your slideshow too. I think there's a slide about that.
Oh, yeah. I had a thought, I lost it. Okay.
Sorry.
Apologies.
Don't get it.
On this one though, and just my 2 cents on this one is. These are all actions that the board takes.
Yeah.
And obviously approving a budget it's been an interesting one because I haven't really been yet a part of a normal process. Last year was a rescue process. We had 3 of the best in the state come help us out, go through our books. When it came down to sign, like, what am I gonna question you on? Like, this has been over and gone, every penny has
Right.
gone over. And so going forward, the next time it's gonna be interesting to see how that works, because again, our job's to approve the budget. Are we just gonna go and say, what are you doing here? Remove that 25 Gs and put it over here? Like, I don't know if that's actually how it works, because that's not our job. That's the superintendent's job and the CFO's job. We're just supposed to or we can make suggestions, I assume.
Right.
So as far as how big that lever is when it actually comes to it, I'm curious.
So thank you for reminding me what my thought was. So the reality is that our system is built to have control, because once upon a time, before Measure 5 and Measure 50, we could impose more property tax. That is not the case now. So if you wanted to add $25,000 to the budget, you can impose more property tax to cover that. Today, we can't do that. So back in the 80s, that was kind of the end of the line. It was early 90s when that happened. And today we can't do that. That's why the lever is short, because we can't impose additional funds. So then if you're going to take 25,000 or 50,000 or 150,000, you're going to find it somewhere else in the budget, because it's got to balance. Good question. Okay, keep it moving. I'm gonna skip over that. So I showed a bunch of stuff about research. So balanced governance is the theoretical framework that we use for teaching school governance. It's pretty much the current research on how we impact kids. So these are the standards in our self-assessment, so board self-assessment. So when you take a board self-assessment, you will evaluate yourself on these
12 standards. Now, Tom, you might recognize some of these by vision directed planning and, let's see, board conduct and finance. What were the other ones? There were 5 standards that was in Lighthouse.
Okay.
And now we're up to 12 different ones. And so we have some core ones, vision directed planning, accountability, using data. And then these 2, the bread and butter of what is board work, you know, board conduct and superintendent relationship, and then budgeting and finance. You pretty much have to be hitting on the 5 cylinders of core standards before you can really move on to the other things. Because the reality is, if you don't have a vision of where you're aiming and you are track, you know, can't hold this, you know, system can, you're not tracking progress, then it's kind of hard to go out in the community and engage it because you don't have a story to tell. You don't have a cohesive story.
Where, now, is this coming from that book, this board governance standards?
It does.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to do a book study, this is a really good one. Yeah, this is a really, really amazing book. Lots of good stuff. So yeah, these standards are all in there. Now, this is board roles and responsibilities, so board governance is essential, so we're gonna spend most of our time, we're gonna spend our time down here in 11 and 12. We'll do a little bit of advocacy, but that's kind of it. Okay, diving in, here we go. So this is on standard 11. The board member conduct, ethics, and relationship with the superintendent. So the standard says the board recognizes that it is essential to have clear mutual understanding of the respective roles and responsibilities of the superintendent. The board supports and practices team building as an essential part of this relationship. It's what I've been talking at you about. What's really what we've been spending the first hour and a half talking about. Okay, so this is the scenario based part of this. So how about this? Visiting schools unannounced to observe student learning in classrooms and check overall staff and student morale. Does that work?
No, not unannounced. And not
Unannounced.
evaluated.
That-
50-50. I disagree. Because I could see going in, what's your attitude of being there? You're just going there to observe and see how things are operating, okay? Is your superintendent okay with that? We have board policy. This is one of the things that we actually down the road do need to talk about, because this was an issue in the previous DO. So how, because we have policy that says you can't do this. We had said, no matter what, you can't do this. You need to tell that superintendent anytime you step onto a school, basically. And I'm like, whoa. How am I supposed to know what's going on if there's this level of control?
Good question. So Phil, let's start with the impact. So that's what I should have. The impact. Phil, you've been a teacher. So have you ever had a school board member walk into the school, and how did that go down?
Walk in unannounced, observed? Never,
Wow, okay.
never.
Have you ever had?
I had several that we knew they were gonna be in the building, but never just come and walk through.
Always announced at my school.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, I've never had anybody.
You've never had-
unannounced. I've had somebody come through with the superintendent or with the principal, but not unannounced.
Okay.
And that was a long time ago,
Yeah.
so like 1990.
Previous 10-12 years ago, I remember this, it was that the idea was in the working agreement with the superintendent, it was like, you can visit the schools anytime. Just please call the principal and let them know you're coming. You didn't have to go through the superintendent, but you just had to let people, you could, yeah, it's professional courtesy. You can't just park the car and start walking around. You know,
I mean, just at a fundamental level, we don't want our school, I mean.
Yeah.
It's November 25th, 2024. I don't want just any adult walking into a school building, thank you.
Yeah.
At least not one with my kid in it, so that at a basic level. What do you think the impact might be of a school board member showing up unannounced?
Anxiety,
Anxiety.
yeah, stress.
Got looking for, it could be felt looking for a gotcha moment or something like that.
So what expectation of expertise do we have for school board member?
Say that one
No,
more.
we don't know anything.
Expertise,
We let,
pedagogy, like
Oh,
what
yeah,
I
we
would
don't
be
know.
looking for.
That's not our wheelhouse.
Yeah, it's not, that's what we hire superintendent to do. They have the professional expertise.
So that's kind of the core of this. Josh has got the brow furrowed because he's still struggling with this. So. One, we don't have the expertise to evaluate. And I guarantee you, when you walk in, even with the superintendent taking you. The educators will see you as evaluating.
Even when I come in, they see me that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, I mean, so I'm gonna disagree here. I'm not there to observe student learning. I'm there to observe what's the emotional feel.
Okay.
Are kids smiling? Are they playing at recess? I don't go into classrooms unless I'm just there to give a friend a hug. You know, I would have no idea how to evaluate a student's learning. You know, that's not my job. But knowing how are things going here? How are you doing? I think that is our role and responsibility. How are we supposed to know if we don't ask? Part of the issue we had last time was that. Getting in and asking, how are things going? So I'm really kind of confused, I guess, a little bit. Definitely observing going in there like student evaluation. Yeah, we don't do that. But I think we should be in buildings getting the feel of them.
And I'm not saying you shouldn't.
Okay.
I don't think anybody's advocating for that.
Mm.
I have a dear friend of mine, does environmental consulting. We've counted too many trees together. But he had the saying that there's no substitute for walking the land on which you're gonna make a decision.
Yes, correct.
So the key, and I think it was Phil that touched on this, the operative word here is unannounced.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So can you achieve what you need to see in collaboration with your superintendent?
Yep.
And I mean, the building principal is gonna be delighted to take you on a tour. And I mean, teachers will be happy to bring you into their classrooms and show you what's going on. And once you've cultivated trust with staff, I mean, they'll give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. You'll get to see kids that are struggling. Yeah, you might see a kid blow out. That can happen. It's kind of like kids are like wild animals.
Yeah, but that's good. We need to know what it's like.
Yeah. True context.
You feeling better?
Well, this is interesting because this literally did happen last year. We had massive issues with this. One of our board members was actually yelled at and confronted over this. And yeah, it's an issue for me. Because it does go both ways. So it's like, who's in charge of who? Is that interesting conversation? Are we going to be mutually respectable? I mean, Kim's been amazing. But this is something of policy wise, different districts have different policies. Lake Oswego has a much different policy on this than we do. I looked at it. They actually encourage the board members to walk around in a non-official manner. Non-official, like there's actually had a verbiage cutout for it. But if you're there to do board business, then it goes to the pre-existing policy. Because with this, like, if this is like, we don't trust the board to be wise, the board's going to do something dumb. The board's a stress. I don't like being viewed as if I just show up and say hi, that I'm a problem. That's not my attitude to go there. I'm literally just to tell people I love them and check in on them.
Yeah.
So it's weird to like, felt like last time, if we wanted to go, like, well, I don't like you, I'm going to tell you no. Well, that's strange. Why can't I go talk to this person? So that's what I'd like to figure
Well, you
out.
can still talk to that person.
Even if the superintendent says no.
Well, I'm never gonna tell you no, Josh.
Yeah.
No, but these are
Yeah.
things that have happened.
Yeah, and what Josh was talking about, we had a situation that was a
Yeah.
lot different than this, though.
Yeah.
And in that situation, we were being flat out told no. Even though, and our policy says
Yeah.
that we should be in the buildings.
Yeah.
And, but it does say that we should let superintendent know, which
Yeah.
that's a courtesy. That's just like, I do a fair amount of school. I'm retired, so I can do a fair amount of school visits. And I arrange it with the principal and to their convenience, schedule when it works for them and everything. And then I let Kim know that I'm I'm doing this visitation. Generally, the track record is the principals lets their staff know, so if they see me wandering around that, what's going on and that sort of thing, but it was a whole different climate last year, and I'll have to say that this year, the limited ones I've done so far, it is so different than last year, because I think last year, under the climate that it was, they were apprehensive, this feeling that, what was going on here, except for a couple of buildings where I happen to really know administrators well. But whereas this year, it's a whole different feel. And that goes to Kim in the climate that she's helped bring to our district.
And I think as long as, I think it's more important actually for building administrators to know that you're coming rather than me. Like,
Yeah.
for me, I'm like, okay, yeah, you're over there. Like, I told Debbie to invite Phil on my building tours. Like, I go on building tours all the time because Phil likes to go in. I said, oh, Debbie, you can just add him to my tour if you want. Then-
I know you don't care, but as long as it says it in policy, I'm supposed to let it know, I'm gonna let you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I get that. And at some point, it would be good if we had a working agreement that really, like, we don't have a working agreement right now because these guys had a bad experience with that. And so our ability to collaborate, we have to get to know each other a little bit better, which we have spent a lot of time together and we've done a lot of communication. And I think that we have a trusting relationship where we will be able to do that. If you shot me a text and say, hey, Kim, I'm gonna pop into Robert Frost, my response would be, okay, but if Jamie's having a fire drill, maybe not,
Or
mean,
you're gonna have a fire.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that just giving the principal the courtesy, because what's going on in the building, is there a health emergency in the front office, or, you just have to use your common sense and be mindful about whether that's a great time or not. Like, you might pop in there and it might be a really bad time.
Yeah.
There might be some type of thing going on, but
So I'm gonna move on. It sounds like this is a conversation you guys should continue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
This is it.
this is the policy PG. School business by board members will be regarded as informal expressions of interest in school affairs, not as inspection formal law. School business by board members will be carried out only under board authorization. This one, board authorization with full knowledge of staff. So you have to get the board to say yes, and then you check in with the superintendent in this version of policy. So it can be tired.
which one is that?
That's not our.
That's
policy.
not our policy.
That's not your
This is
policy.
an example.
That's what Lake Oswego sounds like.
It's really,
It says it's
it's
like,
really tight.
yeah, ours is much more restricted.
So
No, this is even more restricted.
this is more restrictive.
Mhm.
You have to get board authorization.
It's gotta be authorized by the board, this one.
Yeah, so that's even tighter. I wouldn't recommend that.
No,
That seems a little bit over the top,
that's weird.
but I'll tell you right now. OSBA Legal is getting a lot of phone calls on this topic.
Hmm.
Board members going in unannounced to schools and causing disruption.
Is it just their sheer presence that is? So I'm trying to envision what the disruption, so what that would look like, just their sheer presence in the building or stepping into a classroom is causing a disruption to student learning.
Yes. Because it's like, why is a school board member in school?
Yep.
What's going on?
Teachers feel a lot of hate right now, and so they're hyper aware of stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't want to completely disrail it, but I think the announcement piece is smart. But it's kind of like, I'm gonna push back on the expert piece a little bit, because I think it's important, right? Like, if you never look under the engine or under the hood of the engine, unless you know nothing about engines, but you can start asking questions, and if the explanations aren't good, that's the piece where I think it is important to be able to have that. So it's just, I guess the point of hey, you're not experts. Don't come in, don't ask questions. I think that's the wrong, not that you're saying that, but I think that's the wrong mindset to have, where, if you step into an aircraft and after the fact you're having a conversation with the pilot, they should be able to explain exactly how the plane runs. If they're not, then
Yeah, they should.
so I think it's important for us to be educated as much as we can.
So, but that conversation with the pilot, I'm gonna have that while we're on the ground. So I'm not debating the what. Yes, you should definitely visit schools.
But not when the plane's landing or taking off.
Yeah.
Maybe when we're up cruising, that kind, you
Yeah,
don't
so
just barge in
it's-
when he's.
It's the how.
So it sounds like you have a couple examples of specificity about this, of why board members have been going in, or the complaints against board members. Is it because they're looking at curriculum, or they're trying to get dirt? Like what's doing this?
You want examples where it's gone bad?
Going bad, yeah.
Problematic.
I guess I'm
I
kind of
can
confused.
pull an example of a board member who was invited by teachers for the very purpose to observe bad student behavior,
Hmm.
to activate that board member.
Yeah.
That's just one example. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
hot topic,
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways that this can go bad. What I'm saying is, check in with your superintendent and the building team, and then go visit. Again,
Yeah.
this idea of, I haven't said it yet, but no surprises, there should be no surprises. We shouldn't be showing up unannounced to things.
Yeah.
Well, we could show up unannounced for football game, but I mean, public things you want. Okay, we're never gonna get, okay, this is, complaints, yes, okay, so scenario. A board member received several telephone calls from people in the community complaining because the superintendent has non-renewed a well-liked teacher. The board member is familiar with this teacher and believes they did a good job teaching their child this year. The board member indicates to community members that they denounce the superintendent's decision and will personally investigate the situation. While discussing the issue with the superintendent, the board member requests to see all information relevant to the dismissal. The superintendent denies the request, and the board member replies, "I will personally see that your upcoming performance review reflects your inclination."
Come on, then.
Okay. Before you dogpile this, what's going well? What's going
Nothing.
well?
What do you mean? With
What's good in this scenario?
People are calling the school board member.
And.
Thank you.
And
There's
Engagement.
Superintendent.
And
And there's communication
Thank
between
you.
board member and the superintendent.
yeah, that's a private conversation with the superintendent. That's a good thing.
Okay,
This is not happening in a public meeting. Absolutely.
yeah.
What else?
That's about it.
Where's the risk of liability?
Well, board members don't have any right
Yes.
to
Yeah.
be in personnel issues at all.
Yeah. So superintendent
Well,
held the ground.
well,
It didn't. it
right.
didn't
Unless
disclose
there's
confidential.
only one, and that's at a dismissal hearing.
Yes,
That's the
yes,
only
right.
active
Correct.
Yeah.
thing we.
Pray that you never have to do one.
Mm.
Let's see, what are the other, I think there's 4 things in here.
Well, the board member requests, but I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah,
They didn't really ask for it.
okay, so let's change gears. What's the bad?
Oh, threat at the end.
Threat. Really, you can't threaten your superintendent? Come on.
You know, to evaluate the performance review on something you're not supposed to be legally do anyway, which is investigate it, personally investigate something, so.
Well, let's steel man the case, just out of curiosity with this. Say that the teacher was like the favorite teacher in the district. And for some reason, the superintendent hated him or them or this individual. It was a very bad, like, what did we do that for? Like, I'm sure that happens sometimes. You have a rogue. Now, yeah, this is not, I mean, you're doing great. Okay. I'm just hypotheticals, like. If somebody, a board's authority obviously is not engaged in any personnel at all. But this would be one of those things like, I'm not sure the superintendent's right for this community. But is that, but that's not how you go about it.
No.
There's a
there's
process for that.
process. It would be a
What
contra-
and you
the
just kind of
contract.
touched on it. So if this person feels that they were wrongly terminated, it'll go into a termination hearing.
Mhm.
Or they'll just walk away, one or the other. But either way, there's a process.
Oh.
So you have to stay in the process. That's how boards work.
You have to allow almost the contract between the educator and the district kind of navigate the process, because there's process within that.
that could go to litigation. So you might be advised of that. Again, there's a process for that. So, yeah. Yeah,
We don't share personnel.
Yeah.
And
Details
there may
with
be
board
some
members.
details, there's gonna be details, because again, personnel files are private to the employee and to the employer, right? Board members aren't privy to that. There could be something that this teacher did do that we don't have the purview to as board members.
check. There could be.
There could be a lot of
really
things.
bad.
There could be multiple things in terms of performance or whatever that our superintendent and or the building supervisor or that the the principal saw and has been dealing with that we're not privy to. It's not it's not information.
So this is something that's happened. Kim's done a great job of this. I really appreciated an email she sent. I hated seeing that we had a lawsuit and I see it in the newspaper before I heard it from the administration.
Hmm.
Where does that fall under? Is the board supposed to be by process told, hey, we have litigation coming up on this?
Yeah, but we have policy for that.
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I have not, I mean, okay.
I mean, I can't quote it, but I'm pretty sure that
You mean
there's,
Federal lawsuits?
To the school district, yeah.
You can, I think you can use an executive session for like,
You
an
can't,
Oh, to hear
pending,
from
yeah,
legal-
for
yeah,
pending
legal counsel.
litigation, you can talk about it, executive session.
But it depends on the pathway that got into the public.
Yeah.
If the person who is bringing litigation went public
Right.
in the district, I mean, your problem, there's not a lot the district can do about that. Superintendent's not gonna be able to get out of in front of that. It's just gonna show up in the newspaper. And then they're gonna quick throw that link in a text and send it out to you.
Yeah.
Because that's the first they know that it's gone.
Well, it
public.
just goes with like the no surprises thing.
Right.
And like finding out that there's a litigation thing as a board member, but not being told about it is a big surprise.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I should just be surprised and say that, Josh, you're not ever gonna get any whiff of that stuff until it comes out in public. I'm like, okay. If that's how it works.
And sometimes that is how it works. I mean, so like a complaint on appeal, we'll talk about that here in a second. I mean, you won't know about it until it comes up as a complaint appeal. And that's not district trying to blindside you. It's just you're the next step in the process. And so they let you know, there's a complaint appeal. Here's the packet. Go ahead
Well,
and
and
digest it.
and I might share with you, like I did the other day, we have an issue, we're having an issue, an employee issue. That, there was a complaint, I might give you very general information so that you're kind of aware.
Yeah.
So, but no
Mhm.
specifics, like I can't give you details
Right.
about it, but I can tell you, hey, we're having a couple of issues, around this, but
Totally
no
understand.
details.
Okay. What might be the impact of this? I just wanna, there's more bad things in here.
well,
What might
I
be-
think that having a contentious relationship with your superintendent is not going to net positive results for students.
No,
Yeah,
So I think that this board member has just cut their effectiveness. They're not gonna be able to be very effective in helping make positive changes for kids.
what about the relationship with the rest of them?
They alienated themselves.
Well, they've also misrepresented themselves to the community member as well.
Wrote a check they can't cash.
Yep. Right.
Yep. Bad stuff. Okay, let's talk about complaints. Let's talk about BBA. Yeah, individual board members exercise their authority and responsibility of their position only when the board is in legal session. Yeah, as individuals, once you gavel out, you drop the gavel, you're just John Q. Public. You have no authority.
Mhm.
So we always go together, never alone. If there's something you want to get done on this board, then you got to do it with your whole board.
Mhm.
Convince a majority of your colleagues to go along with you to do that. Hopefully all
In a public
Probably.
meeting.
in a public meeting. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well said. Exactly. Yeah, so we never go alone. Next one. We can't direct the superintendent to action without board authorization. Board members will not intervene in the administration of the district or its schools. So all that stuff. Don't do that. Board member, the policy BDF, this is your standards for yourselves. We call this board's best friend. So who enforces this policy? We do.
Yeah.
We do. Check. Yes. And in the most extreme cases, community will use this against you if you're being really naughty.
Yeah, but I found that this is like the hardest. This is hard.
Mm-hmm.
This is hard work. I've had to call people out and it's not fun,
No.
but we have to be able to do it because nobody else is gonna do it. So that's a hard thing.
Yeah.
The fourth one's always a tough one for me because most of the times I just gotta actually, there's a lot of things I'd like to say. I'm like, that's not gonna help this room. I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut, you know?
Yeah.
But then at the other time, I'm in this crazy position of like, well, people as an like, they should have a right to know what I feel. I'm like, yeah, but maybe what I'm feeling is not gonna be a good message, so it should just be quiet.
I have some great prompt questions at the end of the slide deck that we'll go over that might help you. Public complaints. Let's talk about complaints really quick. I'm gonna whip through this. You guys navigate, have you guys navigated complaints
Yes.
recently? That I'm gonna whip through this really quick, because I want to get to the good stuff. When does the board hear complaints? I gave you one of them
Oh, yeah, you get the phone
on
call.
appeal. So yes, it says in the policy in the AR that you can appeal. Complaints against the superintendent are gonna come to the board.
Yeah.
Complaints against board members, I was naughty, so
Yes.
you guys are gonna hear it, and then complaint against the whole board.
Yeah.
Y'all were naughty
Mhm.
for whatever reason. Okay? Complaints, so this happens, I know it does, complaints with parents, this is the cliche grocery store talk. So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna honor that conversation. Because this is probably about a kiddo or family that are not getting what they need, so they're gonna be escalated, so we're gonna come with empathy. We want to avoid hearing details of a potential complaint. Because we don't want to become biased if we have to hear this thing. So it's the idea of ex parte communication. It's why we say Christer juries. When you're hearing a complaint, you're acting like a jury.
Mhm.
So you don't want to hear it when you're initially hearing a complaint, you want to hold them up and say, I need you to stop there because of district policy, I may hear your complaint on appeal. And I want to be able to fulfill that duty for you. I can direct you towards our district policy and help you with the process. I'm gonna trip myself there. Details, direct them to resources, just like I said. We're always trying to resolve the lowest possible level, so send it back to the teacher, the principal, and you can give them policy KL.
Mhm.
And then you let your superintendent know. Hey, had this conversation with a parent. Parents really fired up about the registrar. I don't know anything, yeah, but it's on its way. Here's the kid's name. Boom. That's all you have to do. Okay, now I'm gonna raise the temperature on this conversation. Because policy BG tells us that all communication of substance between the board and staff goes through the superintendent.
Mhm.
Uh-oh. But don't tell me this doesn't happen.
Never.
I spent 10 years on a school board twice the size and district twice the size. And I know it happened to me. Okay, so how do we navigate this? Oh, what is this? So by rights, you can refuse the conversation. Tom's like, no, that doesn't feel
Well,
good.
no, caveat, what if you're married to a staff member? I mean, I'm pleased to
Oh, man.
refuse the conversation.
I'm not gonna hear your complaint.
What is the context of this?
Exactly, anyway, that was a little,
I love that.
I couldn't help it, anyway.
So you're saying,
That's pretty rough.
is this a staff conversation about feedback on our superintendent, feedback about a principal? Like, what is the framework of this?
You can do anything.
At some point,
Something that is a complaint that could be a formal, something like a formal complaint within this channel would be a grievance.
yeah, generally when we have these conversations, you know, you're listening, you're honoring, and then at some point. Are you making a complaint here?
Yep.
Then there's another process, or are you just looking to flesh something out? You're like, just, you know, there's a point when you gotta like, okay, wait a minute, what are we doing here? And you can't you can't just come to me with it. You gotta run the channels. You gotta run
Yeah.
the process. You know,
So that would be the appropriate way to refuse the conversation.
yeah, well, or just sidestep it a bit and just like, okay,
Yep.
you're just venting, I'm listening and, you know.
Yeah,
If you really got, if you're being serious here, you need to go over somewhere else.
Yep. If you are thinking about having this conversation, disclose to them that you will have a conversation with the superintendent. If you tell me this stuff, I'm going to Superintendent Kellison,
Yeah,
okay? And then they can decide if they wanna
Yeah.
talk the ear off a school board member. Because they're out of lane too. We have policy BG, there's one in the G section for staff that says the same exact thing, only opposite. All communication between staff and the board goes through the superintendent,
yeah.
okay? So they're out of lane too. So if you're gonna do this, you honor the conversation, just like you run the same protocol, avoid hearing those details, you don't want to. Direct them to, did you talk to your principal?
Yeah.
No, I didn't talk to my principal, go talk to your principal.
Yeah.
And then follow up with the superintendent left. But I know, but she's already seen this before. So I know that she's seen this and is comfortable with this. The key thing here is that you preserve trust with your superintendent. Okay, you're being the eyes and ears of the superintendent out in community. It just so happens you're with staff.
I would say both too, like part of the education of like the upfront, like, hey, if you tell me X, I do have to have this conversation with the superintendent, because I think that's especially a tight knit community like ours, like. It's not just a relationship between the superintendent, but we do want people to feel comfortable with the board members, but just like that education piece. So I think it's both. I think
Yeah.
you imagine those relationships.
Good insight. Okay. Gonna keep moving. What are the investigative powers of the board and its members?
I would say it's members, none. Only as a group decision can you launch an investigation, a group decision at a public meeting.
And then the whole board can do an investigation?
No, you'd have to hire somebody.
Third party.
Ah, thank you. The answer is none,
Yeah. Yeah.
zero. We have none. We have to get a third party to do it. It's a trick question.
We have the power to direct for a third
Correct.
party, a
Yeah.
third party to do the investigation.
Right. And then they report back to you.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're the jury. You're not the investigator. I love this question. I stumbled onto it early in my career as a school board member. So attorneys are required to be truthful with you. And so you can ask them when you're hearing a complaint, you can ask them, in the course of your investigation, did you detect a violation of policy or law?
Mm.
No, I did not. If that's the case, can be fairly confident that you can set the matter aside, at least for the judicial process. Now, you may have a policy process over here that to really get to the nuts and bolts of this, but for that judicial process, you can set that aside and move on. Okay? And when does the board vote in executive session?
Never.
Vote.
Yeah, never voted.
Ooh,
Wait,
there's one.
To close the executive session, that'd be the old vote.
Nope,
No, there's a, some with,
no.
I'll give you a hint. It has to do with students.
there's a kid thing, yeah.
Oh.
Expulsion.
If they're-
Yeah.
Good job. Okay, budget. Oh,
Guys are minors.
Yeah.
do you guys want to take a
Yes.
break? It is now 8. I have you until 9:30. Yes.
I'm fine.
Go for it.
You want to take a break?
You're good.
I'd rather just
end
go
early.
through it.
Power
Done.
Through.
Power through.
It's my kind of board. I love this. This is great. Okay, budgeting and financial accountability, standard 12. The board ensures that strategic educational goals of schools. Educational goals of schools are translated into reality through effective alignment with the budget and make sure the school district is fiscally sound. The board utilizes fiscal resources based on student needs and district policy and strategic goals. Oh, that's a terrible sentence. It's tall balls berries, standard.
Okay, so this is what we're supposed to be doing. Ensure strategic arm of schools are translating to reality through effective alignment with the budget. It's about taking your vision and turning it into reality by aligning your resources to your strategic priority. And of course, making sure the school districts are fiscally sound. You can't got to balance the budget. Do all those things. Okay. All right. Ooh. So you guys got to give me feedback on this slide. So truth in advertising. These slides I poached with permission from my colleague who works for OCADVA. I forget, it's the consulting firm that supports domestic violence shelter boards, organizations. So I sit on the board of the domestic violence shelter for Alice. And so she shared her slides with me. So I really like this. It's been recalibrated for school districts because we're a little bit different than nonprofits, but. So first one is we're going to approve operating budget, impose taxes. Yes, you still impose taxes. It's just fixed. You're going to monitor financial health and budget appropriations. So that's tracking throughout the year. We're going to talk about that in more detail. You received the audit. Real riveting document. I don't know, maybe for you guys it is dramatic. Hopefully it's not. Have you got, how was last year's capper?
We are awaiting the final. We are right there. Yep. No, I'm excited, so.
You're feeling good?
Absolutely.
Awesome. No, I mean, I make jokes about audits because they are kind of dull.
Sorry, my back hurts really bad.
No, but they are important. They are super important. And they are something to celebrate when they come out good. Advocacy, we're gonna talk about advocacy here in a little bit, but advocacy to ensure that your district is adequately resourced. You have handful of policies in the D section around finance that you can work with. And then you authorize fiscal officers to borrow money, big contracts, that sort of thing. You are the contract authority for the school district. Okay, so those are the big nuts and bolts. Those are the things that you do. So let's dig into this. So descriptor, in each of these standards, there's descriptors. Descriptor 2.1, board members are knowledgeable of the district budgeting processes. So my colleague over at OASMO, Jackie Olson, who's an amazing human. Did she work with you guys?
Oh, yeah. She's helped a lot.
Really like her. She's an amazing human. Yeah, an annual budget is a fiscal plan for the year. Indeed, it is. But Field Marshal Helmut von Moltke tells us no plan survives first contact with the enemy.
Yeah.
Which is to say, you're gonna write a budget. The district is not gonna spend down exactly the way it is in the budget.
Or the state's not gonna give you the money they said they would.
Oh, yeah,
High School Success Act.
yeah, then yeah. That probably hits a little home there. Okay, budget cycle. So the budget cycle is, there's two sides to it. One is the board side, the other is the staff side. So we always start with our priorities. So you said that you don't have a strategic plan. So the most important part of a strategic plan is the priorities. Those are those big, hairy, audacious goals that if you achieve them or work on them, it will move the needle for kids, right? So to do an effective budgeting process, you need these. So you have some priorities. You're probably doing integrated guidance. Your district team does have priorities. It's just that they need to come into this space as well. So you're all working. It'll make budgeting a lot more fun. So they're gonna review those priorities. They're gonna review whatever plans that they have. I'm assuming that you're looking at things like integrated guidance, and that.
Yeah.
And your plan, look at all that stuff. and they start gathering information. And this is kind of what's happening right now is you're probably talking to your principals and saying, hey, what do you think staffing is going to look like next year? What are you going to need for your buildings? And you start doing roll-ups around this time of year. Okay, that's all the information gathering part. Later this year, they're going to draft the budget, so we'll take all that input from principals, they'll throw it into a bunch of spreadsheets and flush out the budget. Then we go through a budget approval process. You're going to do fiscal monitoring throughout the year. And part of this budget approval process, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit, is ensuring that the budget is aligned with those priorities. If there's one thing that's the most important function of the board is to check that. To go, okay, these are the things that Superintendent Kelson's been taught saying we really got to get done for our kids. So when that budget shows up, you should be able to see those priorities show up in there. It should make sense to you, all those things that we want to get done for kids. In a perfect world, you have a strategic plan with priorities and you can clear, that's very clear. It might be a little tougher to see this year because you just don't have that document that's not current. And there might be some things that they can put into the budget document to make that more helpful. That's really important. And it's important that you guys talk about that and question that during the budget process, not so much for you guys, but for your community, because a public budget document is impenetrable to the lay public. I remember the first time I looked at a school district budget, I was like, oh my God, how do I think about this? I mean, it's like, they're like that thick and it's all tables and what the heck is this? And it's got a bunch of jargon. I don't know what that means. So it's important that you guys ask those questions, have those conversations with your district team, not for yourselves so much, but so that your community can understand. That you guys understand what's happening, where you're headed. Okay. I love it. I highlighted this. So I use PowerPoint really as an outline, otherwise I'll just talk about whatever. I love this statement. The board's main responsibility is to verify strategic alignment and approve the budget with review of my financials, but it's that strategic alignment that's so crucially important. You're going to get the slide deck, so you don't have to write down the URL, but this is the local budgeting manual. This is what we use for budgeting. I answer lots and lots of questions out of this book. So when I get budget questions, this is what see your fiscal officer nodding your head.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I have printed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You probably don't need to print it, but it's good to have as a link, in your browser. If you have any questions about the budget committee, it's page 44. That's usually the questions we get, but this is it. Most of your questions can be answered out of this manual. So budget process. Hallelujah, you're in charge of every part of this diagram. No, I'm kidding. You're only in charge of this part. So this is the budget committee. And your staff will handle all of this part. All you have to do, budget committee meets, you're gonna have some things. You're gonna approve the proposed budget and tax levy. That's just the budget committee. That's you and 7 community members as the budget committee. You're gonna approve that. Okay, and then the next part that you're in charge of is this. No big deal. Have a budget hearing, determine the tax levy. It's already predetermined for us, so it's not that big of a deal. It's all on rails. And then we approve that budget, and then you have to send the levy and appropriation to the assessor's office on time. But you don't have to worry about that because you have amazing people to do that for you. So that's why it's not in there. That's it. Budget is not tough. Okay, all you have to do is ask the right question. Read the document and ask the right questions. Any questions about that? Or they'll look at you guys, you're like. Okay, descriptor 12.2 budgeting decisions are based on student needs, adopted district policy and goals, and the district's financial ability to meet those needs. This is what we're supposed to be doing. So So I'm sorry, this is a horrible slide. This is a very texty slide. But I didn't know how else to get the information. Now, some of you serve on other boards, nonprofit boards. Anybody serve on a nonprofit board?
Not a problem. Well, I have in the past, but
Have in
not
the past.
presently.
Anybody on a private board? Like a private business? Okay. So, I mean, these are all boards and they kind of function similarly. So. I won't talk about businesses because nobody's here and that's not your experience. But some of you have been on nonprofit boards. So nonprofit boards aren't that different, really. Just thinking about primary goal, the main thing different between nonprofits and school districts is nonprofits are really tend to be more focused on program delivery. Whereas on a school district, our purpose in life is very, very narrow. It's one of the things that makes being on a school board so much easier and a lot more fun, actually. If you think about our other public colleagues, cities and county commissions, their organizations do lots of different things. They're doing public health and roads, sewers and water. Oh my goodness, all sorts of potholes. I don't do that. So all we have to do is do kids. Nonprofits, again, typically narrow, but they're usually working at program delivery. Ownership, be private or quasi-public. I work for a quasi-public nonprofit organization. You're a public entity. Revenue sources really dramatically different. Philanthropy, grants. Nonprofits can also do cost recovery. They can actually charge for stuff. Red Cross is a good example, nonprofit organization. They charge fees for all their training and stuff, lots of stuff. Okay, we don't get to do that. All our funds are soft. They're coming from state and federal funds, local taxes, and grants. That's it. Nonprofits, they're tax exempt. We get the levy taxes. Yeah. Maybe that's not anything. Anyway. Governance, appointed boards. This is a big difference. Nonprofits, they have appointed boards, so often they're selecting their own members. Here we're elected. That's a really fundamentally different relationship. With our, with our colleagues, with community, and with our leadership. And then again, accountability with some program delivery versus mission. And these two are markedly different than business support, where the motivation is not a program delivery or a mission fulfillment, but returning a profit for shareholders of the owners. So the motivation is completely different. Okay. Okay, moving on. Descriptor 2.3, board members have basic understanding of district revenues and expenses. Okay. I'm not going to get in the weeds about your revenues and expenses. You know, you've been doing a lot of this and you have a fiscal officer that can get in the weeds. But some of the things that you want to think about on these, I'm more interested in this table down here. And really about how we get the information. So first is timing. When are we going to get that information? When are we going to get our fiscal and what form is it going to take? The amount or detail of information that we're going to get, frequency, how often, so our financials should be monthly. So I don't know if anybody does really. We should. When we think about revenues and expenses, what are the impacts on operations? It sounds like you guys have had some pretty tough conversations about that. And then reasonable and necessary, and that's really aimed at expenses. Is this expense reasonable and necessary? That brings us back to that idea of priorities. How does that fit with our priorities? It's interesting, if you just shift a little bit and think about student data. Some of these also apply, time when we get the data, amount of data, detail, how frequently are we going to get it? What are the impacts on operations? So you can think of your fiscal data kind of in the same lens. It's part of your monitoring of district progress. 2.3, the board reviews monthly financial statements provided by the superintendent and understands their role in the oversight. This is one I have a few more slides. So types of accounting. Anybody in accounting? Not you can. So anybody in accounting? So there's two types of accounting. There's cash accounting. So if you had a lemonade stand, you would probably do cash accounting. So you would account for that when you receive the money. Someone gives you $1 for a cup of lemonade, you would account for that dollar on the positive side of your balance sheet immediately. And if you had to go to the grocery store to get lemons, when you paid for that, you would account for that expenditure immediately. Okay. When you paid, actually paid the bill. School districts and most nonprofits run on accrual accounting. So it's really about when the transaction happens. So when the district receives a grant, cha-ching, when they get the award letter, we're going to give you $150,000. That shows up positively on the balance sheet. Now, has the check arrived? No. It's going to arrive 6 months from now. And we know when that's going to show up. And we're going to draw money from over here to pay for operations now, because we know that $150 is going to come 6 months from now. So that's the difference here. It's when you get the award or when you receive the bill, like the power bill. You know, accrues then, but we're not going to pay it for another 30 days. So differences in the way we do accounting. Okay. Maybe this is a little too in the weeds. But how do we know we're spending on our budget? This is really an important concept. This is probably the most important concept, is because you set this budget, right? You know how much you're going to spend. But are we spending? Are we gonna be in the right place? So here's this idea of budget glide path. So at the beginning of the year, we got lots of revenue. We got all this revenue. We got high altitude. Okay. So you can think of the whole school year as like an airplane landing. I don't know. I'm using more aviation and maritime with aviation. So you can think about throughout the school year that we're always in a state of landing. Our whole goal is to hit the budget runway. And so if you've ever seen the runway, they got these two big markers right here. And that's the target that they're aiming at. Okay, so when you're in descent. So if we're overspending, we're gonna hit the ground early. We don't want to do that. That's bad. Okay, so we don't want to overspend. We also don't want to underspend. Because when we think about this budget runway, this budget actually represents our operations. It's our actual delivery of programming for kids, right? And so if we're over underspending, we're wasting some of our effort that we could be delivering to kids. We don't want to do that either. We want to come in and around that landing point. Now, to get really nitpicky with this diagram, you notice that I didn't hit the target exactly at the right spot. I overran it a little bit, right? I underspend it because we want to be conservative. We don't want to come right on budget. We want to come in just a little bit under budget. We want to deliver as much program as we feel like we safely can, but we want a little cushion there, right? So this is the concept. You want to be on glide path. So how do we track that? We do that with our monthly financials. And so you get two of them, and Kim, you can check me on this if these are not the right documents. But there are two primary ones. One's the statement of financial position. And that's really just a sheet that shows you how much value you have in assets and how much you owe. And in a perfect world, those things should zero out, or you should come out a little ahead. Okay. So if you had a whole bunch of debt and you liquidated the whole district,
all the buildings, everything, all the trucks and buses, well, you probably don't own your own buses. But if you, anyway, you get rid of everything, it should be able to pay all the debt, everything that you owe. Okay, so that's a statement of financial position. The other one is statement of activities, or your cash flow report, or you have also profit loss statement. Then that's really just about money coming in and money going out. Okay, on these, they're gonna say, oh, no, I actually have this. I did, good. These are the important ones that you want to pay attention to. So on your financials, you're gonna have something that's year to date, you're spending year to date. Okay, you know how much you have to spend, or that you're aiming at, and how much you've spent out. And hopefully, so what's halfway through the fiscal year? What month is halfway through?
February.
Yeah, that's when you get the report, January. February, you get the January report. That's halfway through the fiscal year. Okay? So when you look at your expenditures should be just shy of 50% spent out. Going back to this, we should be about 50% to the ground, right? To come in on trajectory to land right here. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Can you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
Real quick. So Kim has done a fantastic job of tracking this. She shows what our budgeted amount was. She tells us if we're on track, what's expected to still come in. She's done such a great job. My question is, are you saying that we should get a statement of financial position every month as well? Because I don't think I've seen that, but I don't see it being super important as compared to the expense report.
No, it's not nearly as
Okay.
important. And particularly not for a school district, because you're never gonna be in a situation
We're
that you'll ever have to liquidate and
Yeah.
wipe yourself out. It is something that you should pay attention to if you're taking on debt to do things. So I don't know.
Just a little bit.
But if you've taken on debt, then you should pay attention to your statement of financial position. And making sure that you're gradually moving to that positive, state. Because we don't want to be underwater, at least not for long.
Kim's done a great job, especially this year, of making it really easy for us to follow, like, because we have our resources and our requirements, right? That's what we call it. And, to the degree where we see on each budget line item, like, okay, are we under, are we over? Where are we tracking? Where are we supposed to be? Like, it's very clear and easy for us to digest that we can see it on 2 pages and know exactly where we're at.
Perfect.
The other thing that Kim's done a great job of that I think we didn't see in the past, and she spent a lot of time on, which I had never even really thought about so much until Jackie kind of explained it to us, and then that's this time spent looking at projections, looking at 2, 3, 4, 5 months into the future. Because things change during the year and you get some clues about what's happening and what's likely and what's not.
And I think that's a good point, because your next slide about the halfway point, that was too late for us last year.
Yes.
So
Yeah, no, because you get monthly financials, you can tell if you're 25% through, it should be 25% about 25%.
Well, you can tell unless you have a revenue category that's completely off. And that stays the same amount the entire time, and then at 6 months or 7 months, you find out, oh, that $1 million isn't actually going to come in. So that, in that case, your monthly revenues aren't going to tell you, your monthly statements aren't going to show you that.
Yeah, I mean, if your fiscal officer isn't reporting. But then, that's why we have audits, right?
Well, you would think, except then the audits show clean audit as well, so it doesn't really help a whole lot either.
Okay,
And I think you have a slide talking about what the audit looks at specifically.
I don't get it.
Or did you not
specific.
get into that?
I don't go into specific,
Yeah,
but so this is the year to date, and the other one here is budget to actual. So, and this is a revenue side, representation. It's really hard to find representation, the graphic representation of budget to actual, and this is about the best I could do. So, yeah, I mean, here, in category A, or time period A, we're really under. We're underperforming by 30%. In B, it's getting better.
You can see what Ed, we're really overperforming. We've got lots of revenue.
We get the granular data, we get the highlights of this is what we need to really point out, like it's got very granular this year. But
That's great.
Kim, which is phenomenal, like.
You give them percent variance and things like that.
We do it
Yeah.
at the beginning, what we're doing is a dollar amount variance actually. And then highlighting anything that is beyond the 1/12, or excuse me, however many twelfths of the month we're through. So, you know, when they got a report in, say, August, and we had spent 90% of a budget line, we discussed that, okay, that was our liability insurance for the year. We prepay that specific line item. And so of course, you know, we would expect it, but salaries and benefits, we better not be anywhere near 90%
Right, that's a
halfway
good
through the
point.
year.
Because when you see a big expense like that early in the year, it's 90% gone, you're like, oh, what's up with
Yep.
that? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, we have to pay our premium upfront. Oh,
And-
that's explainable. It's
and
easy.
That's what you do. You say, whoa, what's up with that?
We want to be questioned, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the 12th bit really, it helps because this
absolutely.
is not granular enough, so.
Good. That's wonderful. Of course, for you, financials monthly. Discuss go, no go benchmark. So making sure that you have revenue to do what you need to do. And if you don't, then you don't. So
Is
Yeah.
that our discussion or is that something that the superintendent
gonna-
reports
I-
on? Yeah,
I'd say, yeah, we're not gonna be at our benchmark to do this particular project, and so we're gonna do, this is how we're going to defer this, we'll do this instead. You often see this with capital projects, where it's like they're moving things around to optimize based on the revenue when it's showing up.
That's one of the discussions we just had was a roofing, line item on our budget for next year because we have some roofs that are gonna need to be replaced and we have to start setting aside money for that. Otherwise, we will never have the funds to, all at once to do it because they're very expensive. So we are doing a full roofing assessment on every building in the district to see where we lie. So.
That fits into this next bullet point is looking for trends and make adjustments. Also revenue side. So we're going into a legislative year, so we're getting revenue forecasts. We have a new state economist, so we got some good news, but a week ago, 5 days ago.
Yeah,
So,
Thursday.
so Kim hasn't revealed this to you, but she has a crystal ball. And she looks into her crystal ball and tries to tell the future, particularly around revenue. And so that's a conversation that you'll want to have with Kim on a periodic basis, particularly, over this year, as they get more intel about what's going to be coming out of the legislature. So we may not get it as board members as quickly as they're getting it. And then they're going to take that information at the state level and then interpret it down to the district level. And then share that information. How does that impact the district? So that's the conversation that you're really wanting to have. And that's what this trends thing is really all about. Is having that conversation with your fiscal officer on a periodic basis.
Fast forwarding to your advocacy piece, I wish we as boards could get up to the state to give us the numbers before we make our budget, especially in this going in a new biennium. Cause it's absolutely insane to budget
Yeah.
into an unknown. You think you might be there, and especially when times are tight like us, and let's be honest, many other districts in our state are facing the same situation. To have to have our budget done and implemented by June when we don't even know the actuals till from the state till what, July.
Mhm.
It's ridiculous, and it's just not, I hate to say it's not fair. Life's not fair, right? I get it. That's just not fair.
Backwards.
So that's
It's
going back
backwards.
to, we have this antiquated budget process.
Yeah.
That's based on how we did our budgeting back in the 1990s and prior.
Right.
It doesn't work for
Yeah.
today.
Mm-mm.
And I know I've been in budget committee meetings where I've had citizen members that are just like, I can't vote for this. We're praying that this revenue will be available. I can't support this budget. We've
Yeah,
had
like-
split
It's like
votes.
every other year.
It's
that
like trying
happens.
to figure-
Every other year that
Yeah,
happens.
it's like trying to figure out it's like trying to predict what your house payment should be when you don't know what your income is, right? Like, I
Right.
mean, that doesn't make sense to try and figure out what your budget is when you don't know what your income is.
We'll get to advocacy and you can share that with your legislators. Audit. So. I don't know, Kim, maybe you want to dive in here, but I mean, it's a thorough examination of your financial records. So they come in, they ask for certain records. It is not a complete top to bottom. So they're looking at random places in your finances and pulling things out, looking at documentation, also looking at procedures. And so, yeah, if the information correctly reflects the financial position, it is required. So what do you want to?
And what I was referencing, this was the slide I was referencing. I appreciate that you've highlighted it. It determines if the information correctly reflects the financial position and that it was recorded properly, right? You know,
Right.
that's a lot of it is sometimes the question of maybe the what or the where it was used is not necessarily part of the audit. That is, you know, the directive of the, right?
Oh, it's the how is
yeah.
what's being examined.
If you think about, they're looking for compliance, correct?
So
Compliance to the reporting standards.
Right.
So in
There's
essence,
a lot
you
of
could be-
question about, you know, certain questions about, well, why didn't the auditors, you know about certain things? And that's one of the pieces is that, you know, yeah, our auditors are looking for compliance with with GAP and GASB's and all of our compliance, all of our
Right.
accounting standards.
So
right?
you can, in essence, you could be over budget, but have a clean audit.
Sure.
As long as you were recording all of.
As long as you
the-
were telling what
Yeah,
happened.
Exactly,
properly.
and that's what we've seen, our ending fund, we've been, you know, over budget many times, that's what creates an ending fund balance. Decline, yeah, it's pretty complex, because, yeah, they're not necessarily judging you on how it was spent, or what you chose to prioritize, or how much you dug into your reserves, or those sorts of things. Is there compliance with the reporting and the recording, if you will, of those?
The accounting principles.
Yeah, and all my times, every time I've been through the audit as an administrator, so this is my 10th audit. Either as a principal, a vice principal, superintendent, whatever. I've only had one finding in 10 years that I can recall. And it was a budgeting, not a budgeting issue. It was like, with booster clubs and different revenue sources that were created and not monitored well by the district. And so, but it's like a separate outside entity. It's like, they wanted us to have more control over what that looked like, which is way easier said than done. And so that's one of the few findings I've ever seen in my career. I mean, it's unusual.
Probably one of the key reasons that PTOs and PTAs are separate entities.
Yes,
It's a completely
yeah.
separate budget. Okay, I don't know what else. Oh, question.
I had a question on that. How does the report to the auditor, how does the board do that? I thought that's the district office.
You
They,
should-
they have
you
a
should get
list of questions.
Yeah.
They send each individual member a list of like 12, 17, I don't know,
Okay.
questions.
Vaguely remember that, but I had just coming onto the
Yeah.
board. I don't think I would have, maybe I didn't do that.
It's not required.
Okay.
You don't
Oh,
have
no,
to.
I think I did get that. Thank you.
But you should.
Mhm.
You should, yeah, so you should finish the questionnaire. And then you receive the audit report, but there's a hack to this. Because the audit report is gigantic. There's a findings letter at the back of the document. To the end, this is experienced board member hack. Go to the end to the findings letter and read that. That's where the gritty information is. And what you're looking for is no findings.
Mhm.
Or they'll find, oh, there's this little thing, make that adjustment. And then- Yeah, that's usually what happens. Okay, audits. 24 minutes to talk about advocacy. Oh. Well, sure, let's do a scenario. Why not? At a board meeting, it demands that all future budget transfers come to the entire board for approval. The community elected us to keep an eye on all aspects and details of the budget, said the board member. Says the board member, monthly check register should also be brought to the board for review. They added. What's good here?
That's they want to be involved. They want to be involved.
Appreciate the desire.
Well, they can make a motion and then we can
Yeah.
vote on it, right?
What's that?
Somebody can make a motion and then the board can discuss and
Yeah.
vote on it.
So it would have to be the board to make this change in policy. You can't just have one person.
Right.
You had a slide on micromanagement earlier
Yeah.
That's micromanagement, really?
to that level.
What's the threshold, Kim, where budget adjustments or transfers need to be approved by the board?
So the actual board process comes in terms of a supplemental budget when there's an appropriation change.
Appropriation.
So the board gives us authority within certain parent expenditure categories and within funds, and movements outside of that level of authority does require to come to the board. Let's say we needed a little more spending on non-consumables versus consumable items. That is not a level of appropriation that would come to the board. That would be, hey, we needed less paper and we needed more iPads. Because we're shifting from pen and paper to reusable. Yeah.
And like we added a small item today. It was $895. It was a professional development for an employee. And it's in the instructional improvement account that is underspent currently. And so there's room in there for it. So we added it for that employee because we think it will be helpful. So it just depends, you know, if she and I go back and forth, then I try to add things and she always goes, no. And then I work my magic.
That's why we hired them.
Try to add anything on this.
That's why we hired them.
Exactly. And
That's
so
what
this
we're
is, this takes us back to Field Marshal Helmut von Moltke, who says no plan survives first encounter with the enemy. I mean, mid-year, they're moving, shifting funds around to meet the dynamic needs of the district. And that's their job. They're supposed to do that. But at the end of the year, you're tracking along with your monthly financials to make sure that on the whole, we still have a balanced budget and we're spending down, you know, at the appropriate rate.
If we were in a good spot, like with that account, we never would have spent that.
Right.
So we, you know, the check of it and see where it's at. Yeah, that's the only way that goes out.
Can you imagine a monthly check register for a district this size?
I have seen districts do that for their boards, and yeah, it's
I could see if you had a small board, it might be practical, you know, I mean,
Budget,
a
right.
small budget, I should say. But a budget size of ours to do something.
Yeah.
Talk about the impact.
So often, you know, when I present, you know, that idea, when I encounter a board that is literally looking at the check register, I said, imagine that you have, you know, 10 times as many kids. You know, can you still do this? And they're like, oh, that doesn't work. It usually is in response to some traumatic event.
Right,
And so they want more control.
well, like
in their hands.
our situation, if we were totally overreact. So, you know,
But you have.
we wanted to see every check.
But you have the transparency that you need to
Yeah.
have the appropriate informed oversight.
So this is kind of like a weird postmortem, you know, in my head. What was that last statement you just said, Vince? It was you have the transparency.
Yeah, you're
With the
giving
monthly
a
statement.
high level.
Oh, now we are.
Yeah,
now
now
we
we
are.
are.
Yes. And so just a little PTSD sitting here talking about this stuff. When you have a community filling your library up, demanding answers, you know, just trying to like, man, I never want to go back there again. And of course, the manner of which this is being asked is inappropriate, but it goes, it just like, I want to keep things as locally controlled as possible. But the state, I heard multiple times from various sources recently, we gave you guys a bunch of money and you all misspent it. And so they're wanting more control because how many districts went in the negative? So, yeah, this is a tough one, like how to manage this, because I feel like we're managing it very well right now.
Mhm.
But how did so many districts get it wrong across the state?
Yeah, I'm not sure that everybody got it wrong. I think, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not,
yeah.
that's a political question that I really can't answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to get political. I was just
Yeah.
curious. Because we aren't the only ones that the school district that across the board. have
Yeah,
like-
you're not the only ones.
Yeah.
No.
You are not the only ones.
You want me to take a stab at it?
Hmm?
Mhm.
You want me to take a
Yeah.
stab
Yeah,
at it? in
sure, go
general,
for it.
Why districts are having trouble? So first of all, ESSER funding came in an abundant way, and some districts use it for staffing. And then once ESSER went away, then you have staff members in there, and how do you move them back into general fund, or do you lay them off? Like, you know, and trying to absorb those staff members instead of using it for one-time things that it should have been, that it was designed for, like, you know, extra.
Technology.
Yeah, extra tech, extra
HVAC.
computers, yes, all those things. HVAC would have been a really great use for it. So that's a problem. And then we have declining enrollment across the state. I mean, we're still down almost 40,000 students. You know, we've gone from 587 to, I think the figure I saw today was 545, and I'll send you the ODE director's report. It's out today, the state report card. And so, you know, I think when you have declining enrollment and you had increased staffing because we have higher needs than we've ever had for students, mental, social, emotional, you know, just all those things that came with the pandemic. And then I think we also have a bit of a language delay for students from the pandemic, from kids that were at home. And so they're not, their oral language skills behind, which is causing them issues in reading and literacy. And so we're having to spend extra time and extra FTE. And so your staffing went like this and your enrollment went like this. In our district, that's exactly what happened. Jackie showed you the slide. And it's like that in other districts as well. So like when you look at Ashland's slide that Jackie did, she just took our slide and wrote Ashland on it. I mean, it's the exact same slide. I just looked at their, there's a big article on Ashland School District today, because they have to cut 2.2 million right now.
Yep.
Which is when, you know, that you could have had this conversation in November, December last year, probably too. Yeah, they're having to cut just like we did. And so, but their graph is identical. And so.
So
It's
the
just-
interesting thing about, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
You
you're good.
say Ashland right now, and we're going through this really good presentation with you.
Mhm.
I'm like, were they, I mean, how does Ashland this late in the year after everything here in the news,
Caught up to 'em.
just now getting there?
Corbett, same problem.
They are not alone.
They're not alone.
Everybody's
all
clock is
over.
a little bit longer.
Is that because of teacher contracts or at different times?
Probably.
It could be. I mean, we've had some historic, you know, movement in teacher salary, which I think is amazing. I think teachers are amazing people. They do incredible work and they deserve that salary. And so I think we're having a bit of a growing pain in the state of Oregon because we have higher staffing costs than we've ever had. And those are also filtering into that PERS, UAL issue. That's the same thing. Because when you look at our really great actuarian analysis of our district, it shows that our cost for our staffing went up 16%. And was it 23?
Year.
In 1 year. And when you have that across the state, draws down everyone's per side accounts faster because you know, it's just this snowball rolling downhill.
Some to your asking other districts, why they hit, why is it always, everybody's reserves that are different state.
That's what I was.
And
gonna
so
say.
each time, like, everybody's facing very similar problems, like you said, Ashland's graph looked at mirror carbon copy. They may have had a little bit more higher percentage of reserves to start with a little sooner than maybe we did, right? Or maybe they went through one, contract negotiation in 4 years, we went through 3, right? Two licensed and one classified. So like everybody has different kind of hits and it's catching up to all these districts at different times.
So this is where fiscal policy and I should take off my OSBA hat. So as a board member, I'm kind of a reserve hawk. I remember the days of the Great Recession, how that impacted districts and having a set aside rainy day fund. So have that embedded in your policy DA that says, we're going to have this percentage. We're just going to hold that. It's going to be there. And we're not going to get into that unless we have a fiscal emergency. What that does is it kind of puts that behind a policy barrier Whereas the situations that we have is that if we're just spending off our ending fund balance, it allows us to deficit spend down until you get to the wall.
Yep.
And then there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah, right. 3 or 4 years ago, we should have started adjusting our staffing levels to match our student levels. So
Yeah.
when you look at our chart in 2017, 18, they touch right here. And then the staffing goes up and the students start to go down. And I mean, in all reality, staffing levels will have to decrease across the state probably because we have a lower birth rate. I mean, it's just part of our evolution as a society.
I said earlier, is more complex for kids with higher needs and
Correct.
they need more resources and people behind them to help support them.
Yeah.
That's where the diverging lines.
Yeah, because you think that you need to throw more money at it, throw more FTE at it, because it's super complicated. You're trying to suit everybody's needs and trying to serve your students correctly. And so, yes, you are inclined to do that. But at some point you have to look at it, and you have to look at it in a mathematical formulaic way where you say, okay, we can't have a 1% ending fund balance. That can never happen again. So how do we keep that from happening?
So
And-
understand the expectations on you have changed fundamentally. So I graduated in 1987 at Reedsport High School. And we had a 70% graduation rate, give or take. And that was success.
Yeah.
That was fine. It was 1987, guys. It was okay. Because
You'll work at the
kids
mill.
could go work in the wood, go pull green chain, go work on a fishing boat, work in a diner. There was a place in the economy for kids that didn't graduate to go to. Today, a kid that doesn't graduate from high school or get some sort of credential is going to struggle to participate in the 21st century economy. You guys already said it. I mean, very heartfelt. You articulated a clear commitment to the success of each and every one of your kids. That's not just because you hold that value. Your community expects it of you. The expectation has changed. And so this is a good point to pivot onto this, is because legislators don't fully understand this. That while we are likely going to be reducing our staffing, the reality is we need more adults in the building because we have to meet the needs of our kids. Because Jimmy's granddad, cooked meth, and so did his dad. That's the family business. And so, yeah, Jimmy's got some big problems. He's coming to school with some tough stuff. And we have to be able to meet that need. Okay. So advocacy, really quick, in 13 minutes, you do it. So this is the time to start a relationship with your legislators. How many of you have actually met your local legislators? Good, more than half. That's awesome. Okay, Bill, Derek, you have homework. Well, actually, you all have homework. I want you to reach out between now and just before Christmas or winter break. Reach out to your legislator with email, introduce yourself, say hi, share a really good story. We'll talk about storytelling, but I want you to share something about the district and what's going on here, something positive. If you can get coffee with them in that time, you get extra bonus points if you can be face to face with them. Because now is the time to start cultivating relationships. Okay, so read their bio, understand who they are, where they came from. Go to any events that they hold. They should be holding events in the district, in and around here. I see, what other ones do we have? You could invite them to a school board meeting, tough for in the holidays. But under normal circumstances, once we're in the legislative session, don't bother. But afterwards, next year, you should invite them. Let's see, downtown halls, any events that they do, try to have some of you there. Walk up, introduce yourself. Hi, I'm from the Civil Falls Board. We're really excited to be here. We have a story. I want to talk. So a point, aside to yourself. Make an appointment to meet them in their district, which is your district. Don't come up communicating with staff. So this is about if you
particularly during the legislative session, if you pick up the phone and call their office, you're not gonna get the legislator. You're gonna get their staff member. So cultivate that relationship with them. You want them to know who you are, and you want them to like you. Because they are gatekeepers. They're not supposed to do that, but they do. They're humans, so. Yeah. This is the key piece. Really good story here. Last year, Corvallis, we did summer school. We didn't get any funding from the state. We did it on our own. You know, but it was crucially important. Corvallis High School was able to serve 110 students in summer, for summer learning. 20% of only 22% of high poverty districts received part of the $30 million. So like Corvallis did not receive any of that money to do that. In the last piece, the more we invest in summer learning, the more students in Corvallis and around the state have an opportunity to get back on track. So you'll notice a pattern here. There's a cool story. What else did this thing? Give some stats around that, and then we make an ask. So you notice that pattern, the way this was told, that's by design. I'm gonna just cut to this. Oops. We'll go back to this. This is the nugget. I don't know about you guys, but when I first got on the school board, speaking to a legislator was terrifying to me. First of all, I never thought of myself as being an elected official. And then I had to talk to like legislators, oh my God. And I didn't know what to say. The reality is you are the experts on your district. You are the best advocate. You know more than anybody about what's happening in this district. Okay? So here's the special sauce. Identify a positive story, whatever that is. You got tons of positive stories about things that are happening in the school district. Your financial recovery is a positive story to tell. We're going to be talking about revenue. So, I mean, telling a positive story about that is important. Talk about the need in your district. Why do you need the revenue? We are managing our finances. We've recovered from that problem. We identified it. We course corrected. We've got a pathway forward. But we need more revenue because our kids need supports, whatever that is. And then make a specific ask. And it's what you want them to do. So that specific ask piece, you can interact with my legislative team or the COSA team, Morgan Allen over at COSA, and get what those specific asks are. It's going to be really important to have you guys in the game. And you guys have way more authority in the Capitol than any lobbyist does. Because that's the lobbyists, they get paid to do that. You guys don't. You're here for all the right reasons. So when you talk, legislators listen. Because you're the experts. You know exactly what your kids need. Because you've talked to your experts. You're living this journey. You're here doing this for your kids. You want to formulate that. So this is if you're going to take notes on any of this, find a story, identify the need in that story, and I pick a specific ask. God, I wish I'd known that back in 2014 or 2015. Because I really would have used it. I don't know how many dumb conversations I've had with legislators. Going all over the place. So get personal and be direct. They don't have a lot of time, particularly when you're during the legislative session. They won't have a lot of time. You'll have up to about 15 minutes with them. And that's it. Sometimes it's only going to be 5. Get in there, have a conversation. Use these 3 pieces. This is not a one and done. Again, it's about cultivating a relationship. And it's not just about asks. You want to be sharing the good things that are happening. So stuff that's in social media, there's a really cool story. Kim sends you a really cool story about something that happened, copy, paste that, throw it in an email and say, hey, legislator, whoever, who are you? Who's your senator?
Rick Lewis, well, Representative.
Representatives Rick and Fred Gerard.
Fred Gerard.
Fred,
You
yeah,
just
he's-
have 2. There's your House
Senator.
Okay. So pack it up and just send it off to them in an email and say, hey, I want to share this with you. Because good things are happening in our school district. Thank you for your leadership. This is another one is roll this up. I don't know, yeah, could be tougher to do, but take that concept, you notice in this Corvallis story. They roll it up to the state level. Really cool thing happened, here's the need, we have 23% high poverty districts didn't get the funding. But then Corvallis and other school districts all over the state use summer program. Okay, I don't know what the needs are in your school district, but you guys do. So whatever it is. So how to do this work? Well, one, do as a team, we always go together to communicate with each other, come up with stories together. You probably already have stories popping up into your heads already. Engage with your school staff, community, parents, with your staff. Great stories come out of staff. You're probably already familiar with your needs. Appoint members to your board, the PA liaisons. The reality is, some people are really good at doing this and some people struggle. I'm not particularly good at this. I'm not a great advocacy communicator. But my dear friend Sammy, he is. He's really good at it. I'm happy to go and support him. I'll drive him up there, I'll walk with him, but he's the communicator. So whoever's the good communicator or a couple communicators on your board, you know who those people are, the people that people just light up when you walk into a room. Grab those. Let's see. This is all about being brief. So you get that, we talked about that. And then this is grabbing stories. You share a story from your district, yeah, of course. These are not my slides. I didn't create these slides. But I would say the platform piece is just coming back to that idea that no one is a better advocate or better authority on your school district than you. The last thing I would say is that you probably like having people appreciate you. I mean, I'm angry at our legislators too. I'm spitting angry with them. But be sure to thank them for their service. We always like it when people are thanking us, even though we don't always get it right. They're working hard too up there. So, any questions about advocacy? I talked at you in a very disjointed way. I'm sorry.
That was helpful, I appreciate it. I'm just frustrated. Frustration's real, man. It's tough.
I just wrote, like, they passed a law, they didn't even know if they wrote. You know, like, I don't, like, one of the times I sat down with the representative, he's like, one of the first things he asked me, he wanted a list of all state unfunded mandates. Because he was kind of aware that they might be passing stuff that have downstream consequences to school districts.
That's one of our legislative priority.
That's one of my
paid family
priorities
leave.
too.
Yeah,
Goes
I mean, OSBA, I'll try to remember. Of course, funding is one of them. It's the first one. Funding, attendance is the other one, supporting kids' attendance and being in school. And the other is unfunded mandates and accountability, creating a comprehensive system for accountability. So we can take some of the time that our district office folks are spending huge amounts of time on reporting and focus that back on kids.
316 reports. That's what we send them though. Oh my gosh.
16.
316 a year,
Separate.
316 what?
Reports,
Yeah.
pieces of information that we have to send to ODE every year.
And that's stuff that could be also spent time with.
It's almost one a day.
And you guys are a mid-sized district. She gets help.
Yeah.
Imagine if you only had 250 kids. And your superintendent has to do that. It's the same 350.
Same
Yeah,
report.
same
Yeah.
amount of reports,
Yep.
just different numbers.
Yep.
The only thing
It's-
that would change the amount of reporting is if you didn't apply for one of their grants, then you'd be off the hook for that, but then you wouldn't have the
And
money.
They don't get the money, yeah.
Vince,
So-
what does OSBA think the legislature can do around attendance?
I don't know exactly what they're gonna talk about
Okay.
specifically. Like I said, I'm not an education expert, so, and I teach governance. I'm not a ledge person.
Got it. But in the past, OSBA has created structured opportunities for board members to get involved. Do you expect that that will happen?
Yes, that
Yeah.
will happen again. For sure. We will be definitely. Yeah, giving you opportunities. We'll have a legislative day, but now, I mean, your homework right now. Just reach out to your legislators and start the conversation. Ask them, what legislation are you sponsoring? What do you see? Just chit chat with them, get to know them. That's all you have to do right now, is get to know them. And then after, once January, 21, when does it start? Anyway, middle of January. Then we start the marathon.
That's when the session starts, is middle of January.
Yeah, it's middle of January. And then be prepared to not know about what revenue is going to be available when you approve your budget. Just,
So, Mr. Adams, I over stress about this stuff, but the enrollment thing is a significant concern to me. And you at OSBA, do you guys have data? I know the birth rates are down, okay, but that still doesn't explain the significant amount of people that are leaving public education. And do you know why or where they're going? Because the understanding the why can lead to corrective action. And so I'm just curious at the state level, these conversations that are occurring, because I very much know why it's happening in my district, but I'm not sure why it's happening.
I don't think there's one story there. I know why it's happening in the Corvallis School District, but that's might be different than here. Although you guys are having a housing problems as well.
Mhm.
So you're pricing people out.
Mm.
I want to, we're over time, so I want to yield back to the chair. But thank you so much for your time. I hope you found some of this useful. I would also say that I'm always available to you. So if you have any questions, if you have any other needs, if there's other things you want to learn about or talk about, like superintendent evaluation is our first and most important job. If you want to talk about that, happy to do that. Happy to zoom in, whatever you guys need. I'm just a phone call away.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vince.